Shout out to everybody in the chat. Hope you can hear me. Please get the likes up. It helps the videos get seen. I got something like 13,000 views on the last live stream I did and only 400 likes. Like, come on, people. Takes 1 second to like the video. 13,000 people watched it and only 400 people bothered to press the like button. Come on, help me out here. Help me out, guys. Just put a like on the video and then we'll start the stream. So get the likes up. Get the likes up, please. That's all I ask of you. And then I'll start getting to your questions and all that. So please get the likes up. Then I'll start, all right? Shout out for the super chat. You'll forgive me if I don't pronounce your name for the sake of the algorithm. And yeah, the super chat says, what are your thoughts on the First Lady of France allegedly having a, what should we call it, a Johnson? What are my thoughts on that? I don't really have any thoughts on that. That's what I can say about it. Don't really have any thoughts on it. It's, yeah, I've heard people say it, and she's definitely not an attractive woman, assuming it's a woman. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? That's what I want to hear. Let me know your thoughts. All right, we got 103 concurrent viewers in the chat, which technically means it's impossible to actually get 500 likes as it stands right now. But I'm going to keep an eye on the number of concurrent viewers. Yeah, to keep an eye on the number of concurrent viewers. It needs to be at least a quarter of my concurrent viewers need to be liking the video. So I'll keep an eye on it. All right, so let's talk some boxing here. Only 112 concurrent viewers. So, and please, the gentleman who generously gave me that super chat, what are your thoughts on the president of France's wife? What are your thoughts? Never mind my thoughts. What are yours? I mean, I really don't think about his wife, but as I say, not an attractive lady. Shout out to Ben Dover. He says, thoughts on Fury Usyk 2? Fury was good 3 through 7. I would say 4 through 7. In fact, I do want to talk about something tonight. I do want to talk about the fact that Tyson Fury, to me, at the Joshua fight, he's looking a bit heavy. He looks a lot heavier than he was when he fought Usyk. Bear in mind, we're what, 3 months away for when the rematch is supposed to happen? And he looks heavy to me. Not like crazy heavy, but he's definitely a lot heavier than when he fought Usyk. So he hasn't tried to keep any weight off or stay in the gym. Maybe he wants to come in heavier. Maybe he feels like he was too weak first time around. So, we'll see. I give Tyson Fury a much better chance in a rematch with Usyk than Anthony Joshua in a rematch with Daniel Dubois. That's for sure. All right, so let's start off here. David Benavidez has offered to fight David Morrell. What do you guys think about this? In fact, let me get the article up here so I can read some quotes for you guys. So Benavidez says he woke up Wednesday with an epiphany. He said, I don't want to fight somebody who doesn't mean something for my career. I only want to fight the best available. The best out there now is David Morrell. Again, not the best, but the best available. That's the important word there. Available. He says, what's so nice about this is that it's the boxer making the decision. Oh, hang on. Got it twisted here. Who's talking here? Okay, the representatives of Morrell, they say what's so nice about this is that it's the boxer making the decision. He's the one reaching out to make the fight. Continues on. PBC loves the Benavidez-Morrell fight. Everybody loves the fight because it's the best possible light heavyweight fight. This is quoting here, I'm reading from a Boxing Scene article, an official. That's all it isn't giving anybody's name. Weird article. Because David Benavidez woke up Wednesday with an epiphany, then it gives a quote. And then it says, Benavidez connected with a representative of his team and requested that he offer Cuba's unbeaten light heavyweight Morrell a fight. A boxing official connected to the situation told Boxing Scene on Thursday that an offer from Phoenix's Benavidez has been sent over to representatives of Morrell and they are waiting to hear back. All right. And he goes on to say PBC love the Benavidez-Morrell fight. Everybody loves the fight because it's the best possible fight. Morrell has a big mouth and he said things before like Benavidez had chickened out from fighting him. So we expect this offer to be accepted. So after this fight, there is no way the WBC champion can fight anyone other than a victorious Benavidez or he will be stripped. Benavidez is doing everything, including pursuing this fight against Morrell, like a real champion. Then it says, I imagine Benavidez will get more money. He's an A fighter, the official said. But I think both guys will do well. It will be a good pay-per-view. All right. So that's what it's saying about David Benavidez apparently sending an offer to David Morrell. Now, there are, boxing is a sport full of so many different adages, right? So many different sayings. And one of the sayings is, you're only as good as your last fight. Now, that may apply here to David Morrell because in his last fight, you guys may remember, he fought that guy, what was he called, Kalajic, and he didn't look particularly impressive, did he? That was on the big LA show, headlined by Terence Crawford against Madrimov. He didn't look very impressive in that fight. And so maybe Benavidez has looked at it and said, you know what? I can take this guy. Because for a while, it didn't look like Benavidez was interested. But maybe after seeing that, he's thinking, yeah, let's do it. So what do you guys think about Benavidez calling out David Morrell. There's Benavidez, 29-0, 24 KOs. Now fighting at light heavyweight, 27 years of age, 6'2", 74.5-inch reach. Compare that to David Morrell, 26, so a bit younger. Southpaw, 6'1", massive reach, 78.5 inches. 11-0, 9 KOs. But of course, like most Cubans, a vast amateur background, loads of fights. So not as experienced as you, as inexperienced, as you might think at first glance, seeing that he's only had 11 pro bouts. So what do you guys think of Benavidez calling out Morrell? You think the fight can happen? Because the belts at the moment are kind of tied up until next month when we get the undisputed fight. Then maybe they'll get fragmented. Are PBC trying to maneuver Morrell and Benavidez into a position where they fight for a vacant belt? Maybe that could happen. We know that PBC, Al Heyman, they've long had a very close relationship with the WBC. Is that the belt that will get fractured off the undisputed champion first? We shall see. G-Man says, I still see Joshua fans saying Joshua was winning round 1 and just got caught. They are trying to challenge the Fury fans. Okay, the generous individual who gave me the super chat said, Macron seems like the type who's enjoyed that type of quote-unquote woman. You reckon he's been to a Diddy party? He might have been to parties even crazier than Diddy parties, right? Outmatch, shout out to Outmatch in the house. Shout out to Black Dynamite. Outmatch says, I'm yet to be properly impressed by Morrell. I get Sabril Matias vibes from him with the way people are hyping him up. Shout out to Fight Sport Talk. He says, neither looked their best in their last fight. Morrell looked bored because everyone ducks him. Benavidez looked more average against an old Vosdek when he couldn't even drop him. Yeah, it's different when you're fighting much bigger guys, isn't it? I mean, you could accuse, and many people have accused David Benavidez of being a weight bully, 168 pounds, super middleweight. So yeah, David Morrell, Benavidez, potential fight coming up. What you got next on the agenda here? Now, I haven't actually seen this. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this interview yet, but it was only uploaded like 4 hours ago. And as you can see, it says, I took my life into my own hands. Caroline Dubois opens up on Split with Dad Dave Dubois. All right. I normally don't really get into fighters' personal lives like that, but the Dubois family is a bit unusual, as people keep pointing out. 11 kids, and you never see a woman around. You know, you never see any of the mothers around. All you ever see is the dad. It is kind of weird, right? I mean, Spencer Fearon, who's pretty much an enemy now, it would seem, of Stan Dubois, or Dave as he likes to call himself. His real name is Stan, but he likes to go by the name Dave. So make it out what you will. He and Spencer Fearon are pretty much mortal enemies. Spencer Fearon has been calling or referring to Stan Dubois as the Joe Jackson of boxing for a long time. Even before they fell out, he was calling him the Joe Jackson of boxing. I don't know whether that was kind of like a subliminal dig all along, or did he mean that in an innocent way? I don't know, but he's been calling him the Joe Jackson of boxing for quite a while. So make it out what you will. Some people, I'm not saying me, but you know, some people are looking at this like Caroline Dubois has broken away from what? The cult? You can't really call a family a cult. I mean, maybe you could, but not really because there's nobody else in there, right? It's just family members. So that's not really a cult. Maybe you could say it's a bit cult-ish or cult-like. That's the way some people, some outsiders looking in might view it. And she's broken away. She doesn't want to be under that umbrella. And remember, the Dubois family, to my knowledge, they all live under the same roof. One daddy's got 11 kids and, you know, Daniel Dubois is like in his late 20s now and he still lives with his parents or at least with his dad. And he's a multimillionaire. It is a strange setup. At least in Western culture, it's a strange setup. You know, in many Eastern cultures, that kind of thing is quite common actually. Yeah, I spent some time living in the Middle East back in the days before it was trendy to do so. It was better back then, actually. And, you know, a lot of the Arabs, they've got these massive homes. You know, they buy like plots of land and they build a big home and they extend the home and they extend the home and it turns into like a giant palace-sized home. And basically, in many instances, the whole family lives there. The grandparents live there. The kids, you know, the sons marry women and then they extend the house and they have their own quarters, which is like their own section of the mansion, right? Which is like a house in and of itself where they live with their family, that kind of thing. So in other cultures, that stuff is not that unusual, but in Western culture, it's looked at as weird, right? Because very few people do this. So yeah, I look forward to watching this interview, you know, just out of curiosity to see what Caroline Dubois says. What do you guys think about it? Our Workstation says, put Stan Dubois and John Fury in a room together. Black Dynamite says somebody's got to investigate. It is a little odd, you know. It is a little odd. But maybe there's nothing sinister going on there. You know, maybe they're just a really close family. I don't know. All right, so moving on to the next topic here. So I put up a poll on my community page, on the community tab, should I say, on my YouTube channel page. Who should Daniel Dubois fight next? Put any names not listed in the comments. Of the names listed, you can see here, to my surprise, Joseph Parker is the most popular next opponent for Daniel Dubois. Joseph Parker. I mean, not the guy I would have picked, but a lot of people out there seem to want to see that fight. Maybe because Parker's a nice guy and, you know, they think he deserves a shot at a world title. I don't tend to look at things that way myself. You know, a fighter can be a nice guy and all this, but if I don't enjoy watching him box, then I'm not going to want to see him fight whoever. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, Joseph Parker comes across, well, I don't know if he comes across as a nice guy to me. He comes across as like, what's the word they use these days? Vanilla? Just like a kind of bland personality, right? Inoffensive. But inside the ring, he's very offensive for how boring he is. Yeah? Those last two performances could have put a glass eye to sleep. Let's be real. Yeah, they were good wins, but you would not want to watch those fights back. The only exciting moments against Zheli Zhang were the 2 knockdowns that Zhang scored. Was it 2 knockdowns or 1? It was 2, right? I saw it was 2. So, apart from that, unbelievably boring. Yeah, Parker is interim champion. I think it's with the WBO. So he's going to get his shot sooner or later anyway. So he's not like scratching around, you know, with nowhere to go. He can force the issue with the WBO. He is a Queensberry fighter. He can get his shot at the winner of Usyk Fury 2. So he's not like in a bad position in that sense. There's nobody rushing to go fight him because, you know, the risk reward maybe isn't particularly good. And is the fight really going to sell? so on and so forth. But yeah, 34% of my subscribers, it would seem, would like to see Daniel Dubois fight Joseph Parker next. I would much rather see him fight Zheli Zhang or Martin Bakole, preferably Bakole. I'd really love to see that fight. And of course, you know, you guys won't be surprised by this. Mr. Billy Nelson has come out and said, as he always does, Daniel Dubois knows Bakole annihilates him. All right, urges Anthony Joshua to retire. We'll come on to AJ in a second. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think in the comments. If there are some names that you'd like to see Dubois fight ahead of the guys on this list. Obviously, Usyk, Fury, Bakole, Zhang, Parker. Let me know in the chat now. Yeah, Ben says it was 2 knockdowns. Thank you for reminding me. Yup. Ocean Blue says, Italma. I'd like to see him fight Italma, but Italma has to get a win in the top 10 of the IBF first to make it realistic. Pro Cala says White. Okay, that's interesting. Not who I would have picked for Daniel Dubois. I mean, Dylan White. In fact, we can have a look at the heavyweight rankings here. Let's have a look at the heavyweight rankings. So here you see the heavyweight rankings on screen. The IBF Daniel Dubois champion. Dylan White is not even ranked in the IBF top 15. So unless one of the promoters pulls some serious strings for Dylan White, then yeah, he's not going to be fighting Daniel Dubois. In fact, I can't see Dylan White, just looking over these rankings quickly, I can't see Dylan White in any of the, ranked by any of the sanctioning bodies in the top 15 because he's been so inactive. And when he did fight in Ireland, it was against Christian Hammer, who's just a journeyman these days. And Dylan White still hasn't, to my knowledge, squared his situation with UCAD and the British Boxing Board of Control. So there's that aspect as well. Shout out to Mike. He says, Nelson is a modern Eubank senior. He acts like he wants the whole division to retire because Bakole destroys everyone. Yeah, Billy Nelson is a bit ridiculous with the stuff he says. He is a bit ridiculous. But still, I would like to see Martin Bakole fight Daniel Dubois. Yeah, I'd like to see that fight. Martin Bakole is ranked number 5 by the IBF. Bear in mind, the IBF have this weird thing where they won't put anyone in the number 1 or number 2, often without an eliminator. So it is what it is. By default, I guess you could say at the moment, until they update the rankings, AJ is the number 1 contender. Behind him, Caballero and Bakole. So really, with AJ out the way, you could say it's Caballero and Bakole, number 1 and 2. So that's really, high enough ranked to be considered the best, highest ranked available contender, either Caballero or Bakole. But since Bakole is more known to the UK fans, that would be an easier sell. But I don't see Daniel Dubois fighting Martin Bakole anytime soon. I think Bakole is going to have to go ahead and fight that eliminator, if they call it, with Ajit Caballero, and then force himself into a mandatory position and try and get the shot that way, assuming Dubois still has the belt by then. But yeah, Billy Nelson is a character. Yeah, that's a question I've always asked myself, Black Dynamite. Who would Billy Nelson pick in a fight between Bakole and Fury? Because he's so far up Fury's backside, it's unbelievable. There was a period where he was bigging up Fury more than his own fighter Bakole, which takes some doing because he bigs up Martin Bakole like you wouldn't believe. Shout out to Ben Dover for the super chat. He says, Moses whoops, Triple D, too fast and athletic and powerful. I tend to suspect that he would as well. But, you know, I could be very wrong. I was wrong about Dubois against Joshua. I picked Joshua in the fight. I thought Joshua would be able to catch Dubois early with a big shot to calm him down and tame his aggression. But I always did say, if AJ can't land something big early, then he's in trouble against Daniel Dubois, because he's not going to be able to keep up with Dubois' pace. And when he's got this aggressive young fighter coming at him, he just could, you know, he could get steamrolled. And that's what happened. He did get steamrolled. AJ ultimately didn't have the reflexes. I'm not saying that AJ's got bad reflexes necessarily. They just weren't quick enough to catch Dubois coming in. Dubois was always able to, you know, get a glove up and block or whatever. So AJ's reflexes weren't quite quick enough to catch Dubois on the way in. Now, Hrgović was able to catch Dubois, but he was doing something in particular, which I actually mentioned in my my film study that I did on Patreon about Joshua Dubois. Hrgović was throwing his right hand. You guys go watch the fight. It's on YouTube. It's on Turkey Al Sheik's YouTube channel in 4K 50 frames, right? If you watch that fight, Hrgović was angling his right hand when he would throw it over the top of Dubois' left glove. So he was throwing it in this kind of awkward, like Golovkin type fashion, where he was like going over the top of Dubois' glove and punching down on him. You know, like Golovkin style. That's what Filip Hrgović was doing from the first round. And that's why the right hand started landing. And then when Dubois started getting his left glove up, Hrgović started throwing uppercuts. So he was like switching the angle of his right hand so that he could continuously catch Dubois. And then he started going to the body. Hrgović actually fought a really good fight from a skill perspective in the first, maybe not defensively, but from an offensive skill perspective. He fought a really good fight for the first 3-4 rounds against Dubois. Really good fight. And obviously he had the chin and the confidence to actually exchange with Dubois. That's another thing that allowed him to land. Whereas AJ didn't want to exchange. He wanted to try and pot shot, counter, but he didn't actually want to swap punches. Whereas Hrgović has got a tremendous chin, and he's always known he's got a tremendous chin. That's why he's willing to stay in the pocket and duke it out. But yeah, go watch that fight, and you'll see Hrgović throwing his right hands over Dubois' left glove and chopping them down on the target. Very interesting way that he was throwing that shot. So yeah, Billy Nelson, as usual, saying that Martin Bakole beats everyone and would destroy Daniel Dubois, annihilates him. But, you know, Billy Nelson, like most of us, picked AJ to beat Dubois. So, you know, we all get him wrong. Billy Nelson thought that AJ would be far too much for Dubois and he'd stop him. There's Billy Nelson right there. 3 days ago, seconds out, did that interview. Now, here's something that really surprised me. And that is the results of another poll I did on my YouTube channel, where I asked this question: should Anthony Joshua retire now? And to my surprise, 62% of you think that he shouldn't retire, that he should fight on. That kind of surprises me. I don't know why. In fact, let me ask you guys now. Those of you who think Anthony Joshua should carry on boxing, explain to me, you know, why you feel that way. I'm not going to dig you out or anything about it. I'm just saying, like, it's interesting to me that so many people think AJ should carry on. Why is that? To what end? Carry on for what? Carry on to rematch Dubois? Carry on to fight Fury? Carry on to fight Wilder? Carry on to fight who? Okay, Dan says because he's exciting. Chris says because he wants to fight. Eddie says just fight at your level. Boxing Hair says unfinished business with Fury. Well, as I said in the video I did the other day, I think AJ should retire. But if he insists on fighting on, just like the person said there in the chat, if he insists on fighting on, he needs to fight people at his level, which would be Deontay Wilder and Dylan White. Those guys. Because they're a similar age to AJ. They've been cleaned out recently, right? Knocked out badly. And their punch resistance isn't there. The confidence isn't there, certainly with Wilder. So if he's going to fight on, I think those are the fights he should go for. And there's still fights that would generate some interest. They're past their sell-by date fights, but, when Lennox Lewis fought Mike Tyson, it was past its sell-by date. When Kell Brook fought Amir Khan, it was past its sell-by date. People still tuned in to watch. So I think if he insists on carrying on, those are the fights he should go for. I don't think he should go anywhere near Daniel Dubois ever again. Because I'm interested in watching competitive matches, or matches which on paper I think are going to be competitive. Because on paper I thought AJ Dubois would be competitive, but AJ would come out on top. But evidently AJ, can't deal with Dubois' style, and he's taken a load more damage now. Took a load of damage in that fight. Physical damage, neurological damage, psychological damage. More trauma. More mental baggage. And you saw how long it took AJ to get any type of confidence back following the Ruiz loss and the 2 Usyk losses. Is he really going to all of a sudden get even more confidence back quickly in his next fight after getting laid out like that by Dubois? I don't see it. I think he's going to be even worse. I think the next AJ is going to be the worst ever AJ. Okay, this guy says, shout out for the super chat. He says, why do you want AJ to retire? Look at Chisora's career. Have you heard Chisora speak lately? He's slurring his words. Derek Chisora hasn't made a fraction of the money that Anthony Joshua has made. In boxing, you're supposed to get in, make your money, have your best years, and then get out. If you're fighting on to the point where it's diminishing returns, you're doing so because you haven't made the kind of money that you would want to make normally. Again, Derek Chisora hasn't made a fraction of the money that AJ's made. So I could see why he might want to, nick a few quid here or a few quid there. But on top of all that, on top of the fact that Chisora's got, like most fighters, more reason to carry on, Derek Chisora is more robust than AJ. He's got a better chin. He's mentally stronger. I think we can all agree on that, right? He's got a better chin than AJ and he's mentally stronger. And like I say, even he's slurring his words. Why risk your health like that when you're a 2-time heavyweight champion? You made more money than anyone else in the division. You still got your health at the moment. You're not going to get any better. You're only going to get worse. What are you fighting on for? What, to prove critics wrong? Guess what? The critics are going to win. The critics are always going to have the last laugh if you carry on. Past your sell-by date. The critics will always have the last laugh. So, yeah, I think it's best for him to retire. And if he wants to carry on, fight somebody like a Wilder or a Dylan White, That's my take on it. Now, I want to draw your attention to something I did mention in the last live stream, I think. And that is Mr. Duke McKenzie. Because he is on a hell of a roll. And we'll, talk a bit more about AJ here. Because Duke McKenzie, of course, like many of us, picked Usyk to beat Fury. Now, very few people, the reason I made a video about it at the time is because almost nobody in the boxing media was picking Usyk to beat Fury. Loads of people in the public were picking Usyk, loads of people. But in the boxing media, it was almost unanimous for Fury, or at least, the closer we got to the fight, the more people were picking Usyk. But by the end, it was maybe, 70-30 in the media in favor of Fury. But with the public, it might have been 50-50. Half picking Usyk, half picking Fury. So, yeah, Duke McKenzie picked Usyk and he was adamant about it. Spencer Oliver was kind of, he was blowing a fuse in his brain. He couldn't understand why Duke McKenzie was so adamant that Usyk would beat Fury. And he also said that Usyk would push Fury back and actually bully him in the fight. And again, Spencer Oliver just, his brain was fried. He couldn't understand what he was hearing. And Duke McKenzie obviously knew what he was talking about because that's exactly what Usyk did. He was on the front foot pushing Fury back. And, of course, Duke McKenzie also picked Dubois to beat AJ, and that has also happened. So he's on a roll. But here's the interesting thing. Prior to Duke McKenzie, I think it was in the same interview or the same appearance in the TalkSport studio. Prior to giving his pick for Joshua Dubois the first time, he was asked who he thinks wins out of AJ and Fury. Okay, think about this. They asked him who wins, AJ or Fury, and he says, right now, AJ beats Fury. And whoever was there in the studio with him was like, oh, okay, you think AJ? He's like, yeah, I think AJ beats Fury. What about AJ Dubois? And this might have been before the fight actually got made, when Duke McKenzie made this pick. So first of all, he's picked AJ to beat Fury. Then he says, what about AJ Dubois? And he said, I think Dubois beats AJ. So, that kind of defies what I would assume most people would think, because if you're going to pick, AJ to beat Fury, most people would assume that someone making that pick would also pick AJ to beat Dubois. But obviously, Duke McKenzie sees something in the styles where AJ's style can deal with Fury, but AJ's style can't deal with Daniel Dubois. So, I don't know, interesting. What do you guys think about that? The fact that despite picking Dubois to beat AJ, he still picks, and this was before AJ lost to Dubois, by the way. He was picking AJ to beat Fury. Your thoughts on that? The Joker says AJ should fight Parker next, and then Fury, avoid the punches. Case 1 says, Hatman, should Atama be concerned with Ben Davison moving forward? Not as yet, I don't think, no. Outmatch says, Duke McKenzie's predictions versus Johnny Nelson's dreams. It's a pick'em, right? A shout out to Workstation for the super chat. He says, personally, I would like AJ to retire. I think possibly the only reason he hasn't yet is the Tyson Fury fight. Okay, this guy called Just AJ, not disguising the fact that he's an Anthony Joshua fan there with the name, says styles make fights, AJ can still beat Fury. I really think it depends on where Tyson Fury is at. If Fury gets demolished by Usyk in the rematch, if he gets beaten up and stopped, then AJ Fury becomes more of an even fight in people's minds again, right? But if Tyson Fury were to go in there and either win the fight or at least be highly competitive, then I don't know, will people really want to see AJ Fury? Does AJ need to get a win first before people are really interested in seeing. You know, I was thinking right before I started this live stream, I was having a little walk, and I was thinking to myself, AJ, in some ways, not in his fighting ability, not in his mind state or anything like that, but in terms of the way fans treat him, AJ is almost like the new Mike Tyson in the sense that when Mike Tyson got beat by Buster Douglas, there was a million excuses made. Oh, it was a long count. Oh, Mike Tyson didn't train. You know, they came out with just a zillion excuses for Tyson losing that fight. Yeah. Then he obviously fights, you know, has some comeback fights. He beats Henry Tillman, Alex Stewart, fights Razor Ruddock twice. Then he goes to prison. He comes out of prison and everybody's saying, oh, he's going to destroy the division. Tyson's going to be better than ever. You know, I remember reading an interview in one of the boxing magazines, and they were interviewing everybody about Mike Tyson. They even interviewed wrestlers. They asked Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan said, Tyson's better than ever now because he's got that hatred in him, brother. And yeah, he started saying all the Hulk Hogan type stuff. And he said, Tyson's better than ever. And I remember Barry McGuigan, after Tyson beat Frank Bruno for the second time, saying, you know, it looks like Tyson's come out for a new reign and he's going to destroy everybody again and so on. When Tyson got beat by Holyfield the first time, again, everybody went into denial. Oh no, they came up with this excuse and that excuse, and it was because of headbutts and it was this and it was that. Nobody seemed to be able to accept the fact that Tyson, you know, just wasn't as good as they thought he was. So after that fight, he goes into the Holyfield rematch. Oh, you watch, Tyson will do him this time. He's back with Richard Giacchetti, who is the second best trainer for Mike Tyson behind Kevin Rooney. He's back with him now. He was with Richard Giacchetti when he fought Razor Ruddock twice. He's going to do Holyfield this time. What happened? Holyfield got on top of Mike Tyson even earlier than he did in the first fight. Mike Tyson couldn't even look Holyfield in the eye at during the referee's instructions. Now, some fighters don't care about winning a stare down. Mike Tyson is somebody who always made a point of trying to win stare downs. So the fact he couldn't look Holyfield in the eye, that was significant. Go watch that fight. Go watch Tyson Holyfield 2, referee's instructions. Tyson can't look Holyfield in the eye. And then compare it to the first fight, Tyson staring Holyfield down. Mike Tyson was shook. Holyfield had his number psychologically before the opening bell of the second fight. Was bullying him in the first round. Tyson couldn't land anything. You know, solid. Holyfield had all his moves blocked, walking him down. Who walks Mike Tyson down? Holyfield did. Please don't try to tell me about headbutts. Mike Tyson was one of the dirtiest fighters I've ever seen. People are talking about headbutts, my back foot. Yeah? So anyway, the point I'm making is Tyson lost again. And then he obviously, you know, had a ban because he bit a chunk out of Holyfield's ear. He came back, he looked terrible against Francois Botha. He continued using dirty tactics against Botha. Dirty tactics against Orlin Norris, right? Hit the guy after the break or after the bell, whatever it was. There was the Andrew Golota fight, you know, so on and so forth. So he loses to Lennox Lewis, gets knocked out badly, one-sided fight. There were still people saying, yeah, but if Tyson comes back and if he just loses a bit of weight and if he does this and if he does that, I think he can still win. And this is when the Klitschko, there was even a time when the Klitschko's, like Vitaly Klitschko, I think this might have been after Lewis retired. They were talking about Vitaly Klitschko fighting Mike Tyson. And then, of course, Mike Tyson lost to Danny Williams. And even after that, they tried to resurrect him. And people still wanted to believe that Mike Tyson was going to be the man of old. And it's like the same thing with AJ. How many times has AJ got to lose before people realize it's over? Because with Mike Tyson, they could not let it go. I remember it well. They couldn't let it go with Mike Tyson for years. The fans just could not accept that he was done. They couldn't accept it. And like I say, it's almost like the same thing with AJ. Now, people can't accept when he's done, you know? A shout out to Brad Lee for the super chat. He says, I think AJ should rematch Dubois and then retire either way. Okay. Okay. But can I ask you, why do you think he should rematch Dubois rather than fighting, let's say, a Deontay Wilder or Dylan White? Why would you prefer to see him rematch Dubois rather than one of those guys? You know, I've seen some people say, and I've mentioned this myself in some of my videos, that Dubois has come back from extremely low points, right? I mean, not only was Daniel Dubois beaten by Joe Joyce and Usyk, he quit in both fights, he was also dropped multiple times by Kevin Lerena. Who would have thought, you know, watching the Lerena fight, who would have thought that Dubois would come back the way that he did? You know, and beat Hrgovic and Miller and AJ the way, you know, very few people would have imagined that Dubois could have done that. Against Lerena, he looked like food. You know, I know they say he hurt his leg and all that, but it was a punch that wobbled him that caused him to hurt his leg in the first place. So yeah, fighters come back, but the difference is Dubois young. Yeah, when he was losing to the likes of Joe Joyce, he was what, in his early 20s? Lost to Usyk in his mid-20s. He still had time to come back. He still got that energy of youth. AJ's what, nearly 35? It's different. And also, Dubois has never really been badly hurt the way AJ has. Yeah, he got dropped by Lerena, but in terms of like just being completely out of it, like he was against Ruiz, wobbling around the ring, all at sea, and then getting sparked out by Dubois, that's never happened to Daniel Dubois before. A shout out to Bradley again for the super chat. He says, safer option for him. I think he secretly wants to be 3 times world champion, so it would be the best route for him. I respect Dubois, though, definitely. So you think Dubois is a safer option for him than fighting Wilder or Dylan White? Okay, that's an interesting take. I can't say I agree. You know, I think Dubois is a more dangerous option than Wilder or Dylan White. Dylan White's chin, probably worse than AJ's. So what I will say about Dylan White, though, is he is a pure warrior. I mean, he doesn't have to be getting psychologists in, head doctors in to teach him how to be confident and teach him how to be alpha. That's just who Dylan White is through and through. Even though his chin is gone, he's still got all the confidence in the world, right? He still fights like he's got a great chin, even if he doesn't. And maybe that plays into AJ's hands, you know? Dylan White's got terrible feet, slow feet, horrible footwork, terrible balance. So I think that'll be a good fight for AJ if he wants to carry on. I think personally he's better off retiring, but if he insists, I think the Dylan White rematch would be a good option for him, or Deontay Wilder. Marco Gambo says AJ's heart is not in it anymore. He hardly took any punishment against Triple D. I expected a little more. Hardly took any punishment. He took loads of punishment. I think Waffles are great, says Oh, okay, he removed his message. He was asking about Thomas Carty. I have seen Thomas Carty. The Joker says AJ can still beat Parker in a rematch and then get a title shot. But who wants to see AJ Parker too? I don't want to see that fight. I mean, I guess AJ could do that if he wanted to, you know? Go down that route. Become 3-time if he can beat Parker. But Parker would be very confident. Parker's got a better chin than AJ for sure, you know? And when you've been sparked out the way AJ was against Dubois, sometimes it does something to you neurologically. Where the next time you get hit, it doesn't even take a quarter of the force to knock you out the same way. Yeah, some fighters end up like that. Others don't, for some reason. Shout out to Bradley again, another super chat. He says, yeah, true. Dubois is the worst short-term option, but he won't beat Usyk and he definitely wants to be 3-time. So he may try it again. Okay, so you're talking about in terms of his best option to try and win a world title. Well, we'll see what happens after, presumably, the belts get fragmented. All right, Swaggins, shout out for the super chat. It's big up Hatman the GOAT. And shout out to Swaggins. Big up. Shout out to Goncalo Silva. I'm sure I'm butchering your name. Shout out to Mr. Silva there in Portugal. Four Fox says, Hatman, did you ever run into South London boxers like Hay or Dylan White or even Baby Ting? Yes. Yes. I've seen Dylan White many times. Seen Baby Ting many times. David Hay. I've seen David Hay way back in the days. Way back in the days. Never met him, but I've seen him a very long time ago. Dylan White and Baby Ting far more recently, you know, a couple years back. Dylan White is kind of unusual in the sense that he's made a load of money, but you would still see him out and about in Brixton, you know, and that's not typical, but that's kind of reflective of his mentality. Yeah, Dylan White, despite making all the money, likes to be around them and them, you know? So he would still be out and about in Brixton on the high road and what have you. And Baby Ting, yeah, he's not actually from Brixton. He's from Clapham or Battersea, round there, Baby Ting. But yeah, I've seen him many times. I think Waffles are great, says Hatman, whereabouts in London are you living? I left London years ago. I'm not living in the UK anymore. Would I vote reform? I wouldn't vote for anyone. I don't trust politicians. I don't like them. I think it's all a big Punch and Judy show. That's my opinion. I'm in my mid-40s. I've seen so many politicians come and go. You know, I don't trust any of them. It's like it's a profession where the main job requirement is for you to be a compulsive liar. You know, and that's just it. They all get up there and they just lie. And I can't stand it. So I don't like waiting around for politicians to fix anything because they've all got their own agendas and, you know, they make out as though they're for the people and we're different and this and that. But, you know, it's all lobbyists and interest groups behind the scenes pulling their strings and no, thank you. I'll make my own way in life. I don't need to wait for a politician to come help me out. I'll do my own thing. I don't get caught up in the hoopla of politics, you know. It's just too many liars. I can't stand listening to people who lie that much. At least, yeah, boxing is full of liars as well, but at least you get some entertainment with the fights. If there was fights in politics, I might watch it. I might be more interested. You know, like in Eastern Europe, some of the politicians actually like fight on on television. They get into a punch up. There was even one in Uganda, in East Africa, in their parliament a few years ago. Hilarious. A fight broke out in their parliament, and one guy did like a Michael Jackson spin on the table. If you haven't seen that, go look that up on YouTube. Uganda parliament fight. Yeah? If they were fighting in British if they were having punch-ups in British Parliament, I might actually watch it. Yeah. There'd be something worth watching it for then. Shout out to Bradley again for the super chat. He says, yeah, true, Hatman. Business, glory-wise, is the best option. But if he's truly about his money solely, he'll fight the likes of Wilder and White. I mean, yeah, it's, you know, the money, but also how winnable the fights are. You know, for me, they're more winnable fights for AJ. And to some extent, they're legacy fights, even though they're past their sell-by date fights. People still think of, you know, when Lennox Lewis beat Mike Tyson. Even though Tyson was past it, they still say, well, Lewis has the win. And Lewis was still not in his prime, but he had a lot left, or he had a decent amount left by the time he fought Tyson, right? Or a lot more than Tyson had. With Joshua and Wilder, the perception of most people would be that they've probably got a similar amount left. You know, so it's kind of more of it might be seen as more of an even fight than Lennox Lewis against Mike Tyson. So if he wants to carry on, I think he should go down that road personally. That's just me. A shout out to Arthur Askey for the super chat. He says, AJ reminded me of Vladimir Klitschko. The difference being he never had the great Manny Stewart to craft a style for him that minimizes his deficiencies and maximizes his strengths. I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. When AJ was shopping around for trainers, I kept saying that one of my picks for AJ, maybe the top pick, would have been Jonathan Banks and James Ali Bashir. That combination, those two. Because they dealt with Klitschko. They could have just replicated all the things not just the technical things they did with Vladimir Klitschko, but the psychological approach. You know, I think he would have been in good hands with Jonathan Banks and James Ali Bashir. Yeah, I think he would have been in good hands with those guys. But for whatever reason, he didn't want to stay with them. So, thank you for the super chat once again. Okay, Isaac says AJ definitely still has a lot more than Wilder. We'll see. Let's see him fight Wilder and then we'll find out who's got more. Pro Cala says, did you see Hayes say he might come back on the Simon Jordan podcast? Yeah, it was actually an interesting episode there. It was interesting. David Haye is an interesting and entertaining character, to me anyway. He's an entertaining character. He used to drag me up the wall when he was boxing because the lies, you know, David Haye, oh my gosh, he was like Tyson Fury before Tyson Fury in terms of lying to the fans. But he is he's a charismatic, entertaining character, David Haye. Even now, I like him as a pundit, you know. And one thing about David Haye, which, you know, Anthony Joshua hasn't ticked this particular box. David Haye was a big occasion fighter. The only time that he flopped, maybe, in fact, I don't think David Haye flopped psychologically against Klitschko. I think it was just a technical thing. He couldn't get round Klitschko technically at all. You know, people were expecting David Haye to go in there like Mike Tyson or something. He's never fought like that. He was never going to attack Vladimir Klitschko like Mike Tyson. David Haye's always been like a long range, fighter who uses raiding tactics. That's his style. And, apart from that fight, David Haye, psychologically, he always showed up every time he was in a big fight. He was one of those guys who actually loved the big occasion. He loved the pressure. The pressure made him better. Yeah? Like when he fought Derek Chisora, that was a big fight, a big grudge match. David Haye showed up and showed out. When he fought Mormek in Paris, he showed up and he showed out. He got dropped, came back, dusted Mormek off properly. When he fought Macronelli, that was a big fight. People forget that was a unification. Mashed him up in 2 rounds. So David Haye had the mentality for the big occasion. There was never a time, people might argue Klitschko, but other than that, there was never a time when the occasion was too big for David Haye. He was just that kind of, individual. AJ ain't got that kind of mentality. The big occasion, he's never really been that comfortable with it. You can see it in his eyes. Even against Klitschko, he was like a deer in the headlights in that fight. Whereas David Haye relishes all that. Tyson Fury, same way. Tyson Fury relishes the big occasions, It gives him a buzz. He enjoys it. It's gives him a high. With Usyk's just got ice in his veins, bro. That guy, no matter what the occasion is, it's like he's just turning up to the gym and it's another day at the office. Man's just got ice in his veins. Incredible. He's one of those guys that's just, maybe because he had hundreds of amateur fights, fought all over the world, so many different styles, so many different personalities. And, a lot of those Eastern European guys are very stoic. So, Usyk's just got ice in his veins. A shout out to Brad Lee. He says, do you think Bakole will win a world title in the end? How do you think he will fare against the top 5? I think he will, if he gets the opportunity. Because, we're assuming the belts are going to be fragmented next year. And depending on how fragmented they become, I could see Bakole winning a world title. If there's 4 champions in the division again, I can definitely see it. And how would he fare against the top 5? Well, depends on who the top 5 are. If you're talking about, obviously Usyk, Fury, who else would go in the top 5 now? Is AJ still in the top 5? For me, he's not. For me, the top 5 would be Usyk, Fury, Zhang, Parker. After that, who would you put there? Bakole? Hrgovic? Dubois, excuse me. I'm forgetting Dubois already. Let me remix that. So Usyk, Fury, Dubois. After that, you're going to put Parker, Zhang. So how would he do against those guys? I would pick Bakole over Parker. I think he'd do a similar job to Joe Joyce against Parker. So I pick him over Parker. Zhang, that's a more difficult fight because Zhang can really punch. That guy can, for me, he's like top 3, if not number 1 puncher in the heavyweight division, Zhang. He's literally, his hands are like a bag of cement when he hits you. Tremendous puncher with both hands. And Bakole is not difficult to hit. He's never been in there with a puncher like Zhang in a pro fight. So it's an open question how Bakole would react getting hit with that Chinese power. I'll be very interested. If Bakole can take it and get out of the first couple rounds, he probably beat Zhang. Because Zhang's gas tank is criminally poor. Shockingly poor. But shout out for the super chat. Shout out to, I'm missing a few here. Harry Ramanathan for the super chat. Thank you, sir. Shout out to you. He says, surely after Tyson spent several years in prison, he wasn't the same, hence the losses to Holyfield and Lewis. Well, that's one narrative. But people weren't saying that when Tyson came out of prison. They were saying he was better than ever. When he beat Frank Bruno, he did it better than he did the first time. And most people thought that Bruno was improved from the first fight. But Mike Tyson destroyed him in 3 rounds, which was quicker than he did him when they fought the first time in the 80s. After that, he knocked out Bruce Seldon in 1 round. So at that point, people weren't saying that Tyson wasn't the same as he was, prior to prison. They were saying he's as good, if not better. Now, I'm not saying that he necessarily was as good or better, but even before prison, Mike Tyson had those 2 tough fights with Razor Ruddock. And during those fights, people were saying that Tyson's not the same. Go listen to the commentary. They were saying the rematch, you had Freddie Pacheco commentating on there, and he was saying from early on, Tyson's not moving his head. He's not coming in snorting fire and throwing the combinations. It's 1 punch at a time, then he's grabbing hold, so on and so forth. And when Tyson fought Razor Ruddock, he was 24, 25? And even at that stage, people were saying Tyson's not the same anymore. So I think with Mike Tyson, he was a very talented fighter. The most exciting heavyweight for me there's ever been. But I don't think he was ever invincible, because Mike Tyson fans are adamant that at his best, nobody could beat him. Yeah, I'm not convinced by that at all. I don't think there's any such thing as an invincible fighter. Mike Tyson was around, in his prime, in a relatively weak heavyweight era. Yeah, he was fighting people that had already been beaten by Larry Holmes when Holmes was in his prime. And a lot of the guys were in their 30s. A lot of them had substance abuse issues, very well documented, like Pinklon Thomas, Tony Tucker, Tyrell Biggs. These guys all had substance abuse problems while literally at the time that they fought Mike Tyson. So look, Tyson did his thing, and you can only beat what's in front of you. It weren't his fault that it wasn't a particularly strong era, but he did get beat by Buster Douglas, right? You can say he wasn't in shape or whatever the case may be. He came in at his normal weight. It's not like he came in, heavy. He came in at his normal weight, and he got knocked out. And when he came out of prison in the 90s, or he got beat by Buster Douglas in 1990, February. Then he spent time in prison, after a few comeback fights, went to prison, came out in 95. And now you could say maybe he was deteriorated after prison. He was still in his 20s. He was 28 when he came out, 27, 28. And he was fighting more talented fighters. He never fought anybody as good as Holyfield during his prime. He never fought anybody as good as Lennox Lewis in his prime. So it's difficult. We'll ultimately never know how Tyson would have fared against, how a prime Tyson would have fared against Holyfield and Lewis. We'll never know. But I do think people go overboard a little bit. The Tyson fans go overboard, acting like he was invincible. Mike Tyson had a style, and he had a personality, a mindset, which once you crack the code, it's like the floodgates opened and everybody knew how to beat him. Mike Tyson, being a pressure fighter, only knew one way to fight, right? It's not like he could get on the back foot and switch it up. The guy was only 5'10". He's only going to fight you one way. And once people cracked the code and figured out how to, beat him, then it was pretty much a wrap for him, because again, he can't adjust, he can't do anything, he's too small, he's too short. So, yeah, but thank you for the super chat. Shout out to Arthur Askey, super chat again. He says, fantasy matchup, Hatman, Triple G versus Carlos Monzon, who do you pick? Triple G all day. Triple G all day. Monzon was a very good fighter, very good jab, he was tough, so on and so forth. But yeah, I got Triple G in that one. Triple G also had a fantastic jab. Triple G was maybe a bit underappreciated for his boxing ability because, Abel Sanchez had him seeking and destroying most of his career. But when he wanted to, he could bust out the back foot game. I mean, when he fought, what's the guy's name? The French-Canadian guy. Big puncher. David, what's his name? Help me out in the chat. David Lemieux. Thank you, G-Man. Yes, David Lemieux. When he fought David Lemieux, who was a massive puncher, he busts out the back foot game. I mean, I didn't expect that. I thought it would be like two, titans colliding. And Triple G was like, you know what? I've got a jab. I'm busting out this jab and this back foot boxing, and I'm going to break this guy down at long range, frustrate him, and then I'll lower the boom and start hitting him with big shots. So Triple G, when he wanted to, because of that fantastic long amateur career he had, he could jab it up with the best of them. So yeah, I would take Triple G over Carlos Monzon. But what about you? Who would you pick in that fight? Bradley says, I respect Hatman how you always gave Usyk his credit as well, man. Big up. And big up, Bradley. I mean, to me, it was kind of baffling how long it took. And even the media now don't seem to want to accept how good Usyk is. It's a weird thing. Maybe because he's not from the right country, not from the Anglosphere. So people don't really want to, and unlike the Klitschko's, or at least Vladimir Klitschko, he doesn't speak English that well. Maybe it's just that. And I don't think it's just that. I think it's a combination of that, as well as the fact that he's a cruiserweight. There's been a long-standing prejudice among boxing fans against cruiserweights who move up to heavyweight. There's this prejudice against them, like they're not supposed to be successful at a top level in heavyweight boxing, in the heavyweight division. They're not supposed to. So whenever a cruiserweight moves up, the public are already picking at them and, he can't do this and he can't do that. I mean, that's what Holyfield got when he stepped up from cruiserweight to heavyweight. He's not a real heavyweight. He's pumped up, this and that. As soon as he fights a real heavyweight, he'll get smashed to bits. And it's always been that way. It's like the cruiserweight division is like the ugly duckling of boxing, the black sheep of the families. Cruiserweight champions really don't get respect when they move up to heavyweight for the most part. Maybe David Haye did a little bit because the Klitschko era was so awful. But in most eras, no. The cruiserweights just don't get respect like that when they move up. And it's certainly been the case for Usyk. The public didn't want to respect him. The pundits definitely didn't want to respect him. Not that he particularly cares, right? But yeah, I always thought it was kind of weird because this guy had done everything. He'd run through the cruiserweight division, stepped up to heavyweight, dusted off AJ twice, and they tried to brush that aside. I'm like, hang on. He just beat a guy in his prime, way bigger than him, in his backyard twice, right? Well, first time was at Tottenham, second time in Saudi. AJ's home from home at that time. And people were still trying to find ways to dismiss Usyk. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, let's just give this man the credit that he deserves, A shout out to Matt for the super chat. He says, my favorite part of this heavyweight generation is the twists and turns. Who would have predicted Usyk and Zhang being top heavyweights 5 years ago? Exactly. And if there's one prediction I've got right over the past 10 years that I'm most proud of, it was predicting that we were moving into a new golden age of heavyweight boxing. I predicted that over 10 years ago. And I said that the videos are still up, the golden age videos. I said, in this era, what we're going to see is loads of upsets. People who we never would have thought would have lost to certain guys are going to lose to them. And that's what makes it a golden era. That's one of, at least for me, the way I define a golden era is an era where there's loads of competitive fights, loads of exciting fights, and loads of upsets. Because that's what you had in the 1970s. That's what you had in the 1990s. Fans often, and even pundits, think that you need to have a monolithic champion. They want a champion who reigns supreme over everyone. Well, if you look back historically, those eras have tended to be not particularly entertaining. Yeah, when it's just one guy head and shoulders above everybody, there's no drama. People get bored. Like, even though Mike Tyson was a fantastically exciting fighter because of his style, the way he would just tear into people, by the time he fought Buster Douglas, believe it or not, folks, the public were getting bored. They wanted a challenger for Mike Tyson. It was too easy for him. When Buster Douglas won, it shook up the heavyweight division, and it actually brought some life back to it. It actually brought some interest back to it, because Mike Tyson's ratings, go look this up, Mike Tyson's ratings for his fights were going down ever since the Spinks fight. When he beat Spinks, his ratings started going down because it started just looking like it was a foregone conclusion that Mike Tyson was going to turn up, land a couple shots, the other guy goes over. People stopped getting excited for his fights anymore because it was as if there was no competition. Yeah, that's why the Mike Tyson 1980s era, mid to late 80s, is not seen as a golden era because he didn't have the competition to make it a golden era. The 1990s, different story. The division was a lot deeper, way more competition, upsets all over the place. You know, George Foreman knocking out Michael Moorer, that was a big upset. Michael Moorer beating Holyfield was an upset, first time. Holyfield beating Douglas wasn't really an upset, but the manner in which he did it was kind of surprising, knocking him out with one punch in round 3 after Douglas had just knocked out Tyson. Tyson, of course, that was the start of the 90s. The 1990s started with the biggest upset in boxing history. Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson. That's what kicked the 90s off in the heavyweight division. And after that, it was just upset after upset after upset. You know, Tommy Morrison getting knocked out by Michael Bent in one round. That was supposed to be a tune-up fight. Morrison was supposed to fight Lewis after that. He fought Lewis down the line, but he was supposed to fight Lewis then when he was WBO champion and Lewis was WBC champion. That was a big upset. Lewis getting knocked out by Oliver McCall in round 2, massive upset. McCall weren't supposed to do that. Riddick Bowe in the Andrew Golota fights, even though Bowe won officially both times by disqualification, there were upsets, really. I mean, even on the way up, Shannon Briggs, who looked very talented, explosive, knocking people out, he gets upset, gets knocked out in 3 rounds by, what was the guy's name? Is it Darryl Wilson? I think it was Darryl Wilson was his name. Short, dark-skinned guy who then fought David Tura and got knocked out himself in 1 round. I mean, it was wild. The 90s was like the Wild West in heavyweight boxing. People were getting chinned all over the place that you wouldn't expect. Obviously, Mike Tyson losing to Holy. It was just wild. And that is what this era has been like to some extent as well. It's been wild. Upsets all over the place. You know, dark horses coming back, redemption arcs and all that type of stuff. Yeah, it's been tremendously enjoyable. A shout out to Simon Brady for the super chat. He says, spot on. Tyson got boring. Lewis got no credit. Shout out to Adam Fawkes for the super chat. He says, Golovkin versus Hagler. Now you're really putting me on the spot. Excuse me, Simon Brandy. I think I said Brady there. Simon Brandy says, Hatman, have you ever seen AJ fight so bad? Do you blame Davison? His guard was non-existent. That's the reason I want to see him go again. I don't blame Davison. His guard was non-existent, but as I said in a recent video, a trainer can't teach you everything. There is an aspect, a large aspect of boxing, which is intuitive. Yeah? The trainer's not going to be able to prepare you for every single scenario. There are too many variables. You as the fighter are going to have to use your intuition. You're going to have to, on the fly, in the moment, know when you need to get your hands up. AJ's intuition isn't very good. Yeah, he's not a very intuitive fighter. He's doing things, he's making mistakes which a fighter with his experience shouldn't be making, regardless of who's training him. He shouldn't be making those kind of mistakes. So his boxing brain, evidently, his situational awareness is lacking. So I don't really blame Ben Davison too much for it. Even though he was saying roll the dice and people are giving him a load of stick for saying roll the dice and throw the uppercut. And Shane McGuigan commentating at the time was saying that's a bad move because Dubois is going to counter with this shot. Look, trainers make mistakes like everybody else makes mistakes, but I can't really fault Davison for saying roll the dice because AJ was getting battered. I mean, there was no chance of him winning on points. And when he said roll the dice, that pep talk he gave him before the 5th round, what happened after that pep talk? AJ came out, started sticking his tongue out, talking to people in the crowd. He was shaking his left hand. Did you notice that? He shook his left hand at Dubois and then he hit him with a big jab. Dubois landed his own jab simultaneous, but AJ knocked Dubois' head back with his own jab. So that little pep talk there actually put AJ in a better mind state in the 5th round. Yeah, it put him in a better mind state to come out and still be confident about the fight, despite the fact he was getting battered. So I give Davison credit for that, actually. And after landing the big jab and looking more confident in terms of his body language, because that's another thing Davison told him, you don't look confident enough. That's why he's walking in. You have to look threatening. AJ went out there and did that at the start of the 5th. That gave him the space to land the big right hand. But then he got too excited. He went rushing in. He thought Dubois was more hurt than he really was because the advertisement on the canvas was slippy. Even earlier in the night, fighters were slipping on it. And Dubois, yeah, he got buzzed, but it wasn't as bad as AJ thought it was because Dubois actually slipped on the advertisement on the canvas, which made it look like his legs are completely gone. I don't think they had. AJ himself slipped when he went after Dubois. You guys noticed that? AJ actually slipped when he was moving forward. But because he was so desperate by that point, AJ, all thought about defense went out the window. Completely different to when he fought Kubrat Pulev. You guys remember that? Because he was in control of the fight. When he dropped Pulev, he didn't go in with reckless abandon. Whereas against Dubois, he was so desperate for success that everything went out the window. So, we can dissect it and say somebody's to blame, Ben Davison's to blame, this, that, and the other, but I think it's really AJ to blame more than anybody. Truth be told, at this stage of your career, you shouldn't need to rely on a trainer to such an extent to tell you exactly what to do and what not to do. You should have some discernment of your own. There are plenty of fighters out there who, when their trainer gives them a certain instruction, the fighter will be like, no, I'm not doing that. Because I'm in there and I know if I do that, I'm going to get caught with this shot. I mean, a good example would be when Muhammad Ali fought George Foreman. His trainer, Angelo Dundee, was telling him to get off the ropes. And Ali said to him, shut up, I know what I'm doing. I said, I know what I'm doing. He knew that he didn't have the legs at the age of, he was only 32, but he knew he didn't have the legs at that age, at that stage of his career, to be dancing around George Foreman for, 15 rounds. And he knew he could, because he could sense the way Foreman was breathing, how mad he was, because Foreman didn't want to be in Zaire. He didn't want to be in Congo. He wanted to get out. He tried to escape after he got cut in sparring. He tried to actually leave the country. The whole country was in favor of Ali, right? So Foreman didn't want to be there. He was angry that he wasn't allowed to leave. Right? The president of Zaire closed down all the exits for George Foreman, wouldn't let him leave the country, forced him to go through with the fight, basically. That's what it was. Lumumba, right? And so when Foreman went in there with Ali, he was so angry at being kept in Zaire, he just wanted to get the fight over quick. And Ali knew that. He read the whole situation perfectly. His team didn't get it. Angelo Dundee didn't get it. But Ali was smart enough. He's like, no, I know what's going on here. This guy's frustrated already before the fight's even started. Yeah? He's swinging everything at me. He's not even thinking about pacing himself. It's boiling hot here. in the African heat. This guy's going to gas out. He figured that out early in the fight. And he told his corner to shut up. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to get this guy. Yeah? That's what you should have at that stage of your career as a top-level fighter. You should have enough discernment to be able to figure it out for yourself. It's not that you don't need the trainer. They might offer you some bits of information here and there. They might see certain things, right? It might help to motivate you in certain moments. But ultimately, the fighter is where the buck stops. When you're that experienced, you're not a novice at 34, 35 like AJ is. You're supposed to know what to do. You're supposed to be savvy enough when you're going in to finish somebody or follow up that you're also thinking about defense. So it's all AJ's fault as far as I'm concerned. It's not really Davison. It's AJ's shortcomings. But shout out to Sam and Brandy for the super chat. Adam Fawkes, Golovkin Hagler. That is such a tough fight to pick. Because both guys had iron jaws. Both guys could box. Both guys could punch. I'm going to say they share a win and a loss each and a draw. How about that? How's that for sitting on the fence? If I was really pushed, because I find it very difficult to split them, I might go for Golovkin only because, bear with me, some people are going to be upset with that pick, only because when Hagler was fighting, they were still weighing in on the day of the fight. So Hagler was actually a lot smaller than you realize. Yeah? Hagler was like 5'8". In the ring, I don't think he would have been as big as Golovkin. Because, again, these guys were weighing in on the day of the fight, so they weren't losing the crazy amounts of weight the fighters are losing today to boil down, to get down to middleweight or whatever. Then they rehydrate to 170 plus pounds. Back in the days, they weren't really doing that. They were fighting closer to their natural weight. But, yeah, it's a pick'em fight. Hagler against Triple G, tremendous. London Tokyo says, tell Hearns that Hagler was small. Well, Hearns was coming up from welterweight or light middleweight. So he was coming up through the weights when he fought Hagler. I'm talking about small by today's standards. Yeah, if you compare Marvin Hagler to a modern middleweight, he's small. Because they were weighing in on the day of the fight. So they weren't able to dehydrate as much as the middleweights today. I mean, welterweights today, realistically, someone like Boots Ennis is probably a similar size to Marvin Hagler. Again, look up Hagler's stats. He's like 5'8". All right, 1 second, people. 1 sec. Somebody says I'm overrating Golovkin, excuse me. Well, it's all opinions, innit? We'll never know at the end of the day. Fantasy matchups can never happen. So, yeah. Joe says AJ's taken the Larry Holmes 3 times. That's why he fell off. Has he? I don't know. I mean, AJ fell off before all that, right? He was beaten by Ruiz in 2019, June 1st. Nova says, Hatman, do you stand by what you said back when Usyk beat Benavidez? I remember at the time you made a video and you believe Benavidez was the winner with a fight. But I also made a video shortly after the first video, I guess you didn't see it, where having watched the fight again, I said Usyk did win. So I changed my mind when I watched the fight again. But it was very close. That Usyk-Benavidez fight was very, very close. Glad Titan says, Hatman, you got Golovkin over Monzon and Hagler, 2 of the best middleweights of all time. That means you got him as the best ever at the weight. Well, no, because I don't judge greatness based upon who I think would beat who in a fantasy matchup. That's not how I judge greatness. I judge a fighter's greatness on their resume, because that's something more tangible. Fantasy matchups, anyone can have an opinion on a fantasy matchup, and we'll never know the truth, right? Unless we've got a time machine where we can take a fighter from today's era back into the Hagler era in the 80s and have them fight each other, then we'll never know. So I don't tend to judge fighters' greatness on who I think would win in a fantasy matchup. I judge it based on their resume. And, you know, Hagler's resume is better than Golovkin's resume. So I'd say Hagler's the higher up in the all-time great middleweight champions list, and Golovkin, yeah, he's higher up, but boxing is a matter of styles make fights. And, you know, I find it very difficult to pick a winner between Hagler and Golovkin. Very difficult. Simon Brandy says, Hatman, would you do Misfits? Who do you reckon you could beat? Jake Paul, come on, talk that smoke. Do your opinions get you in trouble? I'm in my mid-40s. I wouldn't want to do Misfits or anything like that at my age. I know Mike Tyson's fighting Jake Paul, but yeah, I wouldn't have any interest in that, really. Wouldn't have any interest in it. Unless there was somebody I really didn't like and had a reason to want to fight them, maybe I'd do it. But unless there's someone I really don't like, I'll be like, you know, what am I doing this for? Let these young guys, you know, enjoy their time in the sun. A shout out for the super chat. Ricky Torres, shout out for the super chat. He said, Tyson missed 91 fight with Holyfield, both prime. Can't say Tyson wins, but what a fight that would have been. Holyfield never died 10 round with Bo. Yeah. They were supposed to fight in 91, that's correct. But Tyson went to prison. Holyfield fought Burt Cooper instead. He was actually supposed to fight a guy called Francesco Damiani, an Italian guy. But Damiani pulled out injured. In stepped Burt Cooper, and he nearly knocked Holyfield out. And, you know, Lennox Lewis was doing some commentary. I think it was for Sky. Pretty sure it was for Sky. Because Lewis actually fought on the undercard of Holyfield versus Burt Cooper against Tyrell Biggs. And so after his fight was finished, he was doing a little bit of commentary for Sky alongside Ian Dark and Colin Hart. And Lewis, during the Holyfield-Burt Cooper fight, said Holyfield got exposed. He's been exposed. And Holyfield lived with that throughout most of his first run, all of his first run as heavyweight champion. People talking about he's not a real champion. He got exposed in the Cooper fight. He got exposed in the Larry Holmes fight. You know, people look back at Holyfield now, a lot of people anyway, as a great fighter. But at the time, he wasn't given a lot of respect as heavyweight champion. Yeah, people acted like he's a pretender because he was in the massive shadow of Mike Tyson. And that really irked him. You know, that got to him for years. The fact that people were constantly putting Mike Tyson over him. That really upset him. Glad Titan says, Hatman, do you agree that this is one of the best times to be a boxing fan? The sport has gone mainstream. Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. It's a fantastic time to be a boxing fan. Fantastic time. Especially a heavyweight boxing fan. You know, the heavyweight division has been carrying the sport for a while now. The other divisions, I mean, middleweight is dead. Welterweight is dead. These are like the, you know, classic, historically classic divisions. Middleweight's dead. Welterweight is dead. We're about to see a great light heavyweight fight. But apart from the two combatants in that fight, the rest of the light heavyweight division is, you know? Yeah, you had a good fight between Joshua Buatsi and Willie Hutchinson. That was a good fight. But light heavyweight division is not that great apart from Beterbiev and Bivol in terms of entertainment. So the heavyweight division has been carrying boxing on its back, really. And people will miss this era when it's over. They will look back on it with fond memories. G-Man says, Hatman, what has happened to 147? Was always a good division. Now it's pretty poor. Yeah, and you know, it's the natural cycles, right? Peaks and troughs. Most divisions go through it. It just so happens that welterweight is going through it right now. It's in a trough, same as middleweight. But, you know, I do have to give AJ credit for helping boxing to become mainstream again. Because, yeah, Tyson Fury beat Klitschko and he paved the way for AJ to have the success that he had. But commercially, AJ paved the way for everybody else. He was the one doing Wembley and all the big stadiums and making the massive purses in the heavyweight division before Fury, before Wilder. I mean, they were making peanuts compared to what AJ was making. So AJ brought the attention and the money. You know, I mean, some people could say he was never the best and this and that, and he didn't deserve the attention and he didn't deserve the purses. You can make all those arguments, right? But the fact of the matter is, he did make those purses and he did fill those stadiums and he did attract the mainstream audience, and that benefited all the other heavyweights. It's just the fact it did. It benefited Fury. It benefited Wilder. You know, until Wilder started beefing with AJ, he wasn't making any money. It's not until he started that beef with AJ that his purses really started to go up. The same with Fury. Yeah, they broke away and had their little rivalry, you know, and tried to make AJ irrelevant, you know. But yeah, AJ deserves credit, him and Eddie Hearn, for bringing the mainstream audience to boxing, to make it popular, more popular than it's ever been, certainly in Britain. Post-war, at least. So, yeah, AJ deserves credit for that. You know, Derek Chisora talks about this a lot. How, you know, he always wants AJ to win because AJ brings the money into the division. It's like a trickle-down effect. Because he makes so much money and because he brings so much attention to it, the other fighters get more attention. You know, without AJ, Derek Chisora's career probably wouldn't have gone on as long due to that trickle-down effect. So, yeah, him and Eddie Hearn deserve credit for that. Ricky Torres says, Devin suing Ryan Garcia for emotional trauma for him using steroids. Plus, he wanted a free ticket for the Joshua Dubois fight. Argument with Eddie Hearn. Is he actually suing Ryan Garcia for emotional trauma? Surely not. For using steroids, maybe. Emotional trauma, that's wild. That's wild. That's wild. That's true. Shout out to Ricky Torres for the super chat. Yeah, I saw Devin bickering with Eddie Hearn at the Dubois fight over something that Devin had said online, and Eddie wasn't happy about it, so he confronted Devin and said, don't ever disrespect me, so on and so forth. Handbags. Shout out to Hyperspaz for the super chat. He says, possible if Beterbiev and Usyk win their upcoming fights, they could meet for a showdown at cruiserweight. If so, would it sell? It's interesting, you know. I mean, if Beterbiev were to go through Bivol, destroy him, then some people might be interested in that fight, you know? So it all comes down to how much of a chance the public think Beterbiev would have. I know he fought and beat Usyk in the amateurs. In fact, they fought a couple times, didn't they? And I think Usyk won and Beterbiev also won. So they might have swapped wins and losses, but that was a long time ago. Today, I have to assume most people would think Usyk would beat Beterbiev comfortably. So Beterbiev is going to need to do something pretty spectacular against Bivol to make that fight more intriguing to the public. So let's see how Beterbiev does. And then after that, you know, we could explore it. Beterbiev against Usyk. Ben Square says, Terry Marsh shot Frank Warren. Well, Terry Marsh went on trial for that, and he didn't get sent down. But it has to be said, Frank Warren says he knows who shot him, and he refuses to tell the authorities because he doesn't want to be known as a grass. Because he says in the area he grew up in, North London, you know, they look down on grasses. So, did Terry Marsh do it or didn't he do it? You make your own mind up. But officially, he wasn't sent down for it. In fact, I remember Terry Marsh doing some commentary with Jim Rosenthal. Which fight was it? I think it might have been Tommy Hearns versus Dennis Andrews. The UK broadcast of that, I think it was Jim Rosenthal and Terry Marsh commentating. Was that around the time when Frank Warren got popped? It can't have been far off the time. Around that time period. Yeah, Telstar says, Frank Warren don't walk with a limp yet. Astonishing for a man who got shot. Well, you know, Frank Warren is not a boxer, but I tell you what, he is somebody that has a tremendously strong will. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. What a tremendously strong will that man has. He's a ferocious individual, Frank Warren. I mean, you wonder where that ferocity is in his kids. his sons. Francis ain't got it. George apparently has got it a bit. He's got some of that ferocity, but George Warren looks weird. Doesn't he look weird? He looks like a singer in a 1980s British pop band or something. Like he looks like a member of the Pet Shop Boys or something like that. He's got that kind of look about him. He looks weird. But yeah, he apparently has some ferocity in him, but he's not really one for the cameras. But Frank's still in his 70s. He's a pit bull. As you saw the other day on TalkSport when he threatened to sue Andy Goldstein. Frank the Rip, back to his old tricks. Philip says, you mean like Phil Collins? No. Not like Phil Collins. No. There was kind of like this effeminate look that some of the 1980s British pop stars had, like Pet Shop Boys and people like that. Effeminate looking. That's how George Warren looks. He's got that kind of effeminate 1980s pop singer look about him. Phil Collins was never effeminate. Coppen says, random non-boxing question. What was your favorite cartoons as a kid? God, there were so many. Growing up in the 80s. There you go. Black Dynamite says George Warren is cut from the same cloth as George Michael. Yeah, something like that. Favorite cartoons growing up? Well, growing up in the 80s, you know, there was Tom and Jerry, obviously. All of the Warner Brothers cartoons. You know, Donald Duck, Daffy Duck, Yosemite Sam, Roadrunner, and Speedy Gonzales and all that. And there were some more obscure ones, you know. When we moved to Britain, this would have been late 80s. There was Danger Mouse. There was Banana Man. He-Man, of course. Thundercats. This is like really late 80s, early 90s now. There was one called Pole Position. Mask. Will-O the Wisp. There was another one. I can't remember the name of it, but the villain in it was called Clandestino. Clandestino. That's just what I remember. The villain called Clandestino. Not sure if any of you know which cartoon I'm talking about. Spandau Ballet. There you go. Ocean Blue. Yes. George Warren looks like he could be a member of Spandau Ballet. That's exactly what he looks like. Like he could be a member of Spandau Ballet. Yes. Dungeons and Dragons. I mentioned Banana Man, right? Danger Mouse. Back in those days, they had like weird kids' TV shows. Timmy Mallet. There was Philip Schofield was still a kids' TV presenter then with Gordon the Gopher. There was Ghost Train. What was that one called? Wurzel Gummidge. These are not cartoons, but these are kids' shows. Wurzel Gummidge with Grot Bags. Funhouse with Pat Sharp with the mullet. Yeah. Tony Hart, yeah. Super Ted. Oh, the A-Team, yeah, that was an 80s show. That was great. There were so many great shows. You know, one thing I've long been lamenting about is why the theme tunes in the 80s and the 90s, but particularly the 80s and the 70s, how come they don't make theme tunes that good anymore for TV shows or films? The theme tunes were spectacular. Like every television show in the 80s had a memorable, iconic theme song. And now they can't even, come up with one. It's incredible. Back then there was Obviously, the A-Team had an iconic theme tune. There was Dallas, MASH. There was, what's the one I was thinking of now? The Fool Guy, Lassie. No, really going back. Cheers, Night Rider. There you go, Night Rider. Can't forget about Street Hawk. Oh my gosh, got some oldies in the chat here like me. Street Hawk. Yeah, Night Rider's fully iconic. Miami Vice, Airwolf. Yes. Yes. Airwolf. How come they don't make theme tunes like that anymore? Trapdoor. Remember that? Anyone remember Nightmare? The Crystal Maze. Now we're moving into the 90s. Crystal Maze. Yeah, Timmy Mallet. He was off key. Timmy Mallet to me, maybe I'm misremembering him, but he always looked like Jonathan King to me. He had like the same top lip and teeth at the top. He looked like Jonathan King. Maybe a lot of you don't know who Jonathan King was. You don't want to know who he was. He was a wrong'un. Krypton Factor, yeah. With that O'Brien guy, he was funny, playing his little accordion, you know? Yeah. The Big Breakfast was the greatest morning, the greatest breakfast show in the history of mankind. Was the Big Breakfast with Johnny and Denise. Never mind when Chris Evans was doing it with Gabby Roslin. Nah, that was whatever. When Johnny and Denise were in their prime, there has never been a breakfast show that has ever come close before or since to the Big Breakfast. I used to be late for school on a regs watching that show. It was just too damn good. Seriously, the banter and the chemistry between Johnny and Denise was crazy. It was crazy. The innuendos they used to do on there, you know, the banter, the characters that Johnny used to come up with, hilarious. Bantering with the rest of the team. They made the whole team, you know, the camera crew and all that part of the show. There was Cable Casual, the Carpet Monster. Yeah. The Word with Terry Christian, who had the strongest Manchester accent in history. Yeah, The Word was a great show. Jimmy says the Big Breakfast was like a watered down The Word. No, I wouldn't say it was a watered down The Word. It had elements of that to it. I would say the Big Breakfast was more funny. The Word was kind of a bit corny at times, you know? Terry Christian could be a bit corny, and who is the other guy with the Elvis Presley haircut? I forget his name. He was from London, maybe. They were a bit corny on there sometimes, even though it was more like adult type content because of the time of, you know, in the evening it was on. They were a bit corny on there. Johnny was like funny. Johnny Vaughan was damn funny. He weren't corny at all. He was just a funny MF for that guy. It was funny. And the chemistry of Denise, yeah, amazing. Adrian says only Fools and Horses will always be the best. Yeah, if you're talking sitcoms. Mark Lamar, that's a guy I'm talking. Yeah, Mark Lamar. Shabba Ranks on The Word, you know. Yeah. Tier 5 Friday, I was never a big fan of that. I never thought Chris Evans was that entertaining. You know, he's whatever to me. Red Dwarf. Yup, was a big fan of that back in the days. Liston, Rimmer. I mean, Rimmer's a crazy name. I mean, they were having a laugh with some of them names. Rimmer. Crazy. Crazy. Giving him that name. Shout out to KO Boxing Vibe for the super chat. He says, how do you think Wilder versus AJ would go now? That's a 50-50 right now. Whoever can pluck up the courage to actually launch a serious attack probably gets the job done. I might slightly edge towards Wilder, to be honest. I might slightly edge towards Wilder, but not with any great confidence. It's a pick'em. Whoever can muster up the courage to actually mount a serious, sustained attack will probably win it. Shout out for the super chat. Jamie Theakston was a dork. Yeah, he was a hell of a dork. Jamie Theakston. He was like somebody who was born to do kids TV, but didn't want to live that movie. He wanted to be like taken seriously. But no, Jamie Theakston was a cornball. Funhouse, yeah, with Pat Sharp. It was called Pat Sharp, right? With the mullet. And then you did the little go-kart race thing at the end. Live and Kicking with Andy Peters. Noel Edmonds. Art Attack, yeah. And you know that statue, that like statue head, the bust in Art Attack? It kind of looks like Barry Hearn. Somebody pointed that out on Facebook years ago. that like statue in Art Attack looks like Barry Hearn. The Real McCoy up with Eddie Nesta and all those guys. Used to watch every episode of Real McCoy. Eddie Nesta, Leo Muhammad, Curtis Walker. Yep. Nightmare on ITV. I mentioned that a couple minutes ago. Nightmare. Mr. Fraser, yeah. That was Leo Muhammad's character, Mr. Fraser. Bodger and Badger. The Chuckle Brothers. What the hell were the Chuckle Brothers all about? How weird was that? You know, there was a form of humor that came out of the north of England in the 1980s that was just bizarre. I mean, you know, I don't know where that humor came from and what it was all about, but the Chuckle Brothers were an example of it, and they were just weird as hell. These middle-aged guys with like, you know, mustaches, and it's just weird. I don't know what that was all about. Why they were kids' TV entertainers. Very strange. Jim will fix it. Let's not even talk about him. Good God. Talk about weird northern child's entertainers. It doesn't get any weirder than him. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Another perfect example. Yeah. Weird. Because he was creepy as hell. Jim will fix it. He always looked like something out of a horror movie. His hair looked like some mad scarecrow, and just mad creepy from day one. Never understood it. Shell suits and big chains, and he was dressed like the travelers in Lock Stock, you know, like shell suit and rings on and gold. It's just weird. Very, very weird. Somebody says nonce humor. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. Don't get it twisted. They were very funny, you know, northern comics and whatever, but I'm just saying there was a particular type of northern humor at that time. Kids, entertainers who probably cut their teeth performing at Butlins and Pontins and stuff like that. You know, like trashy seaside resorts in the 70s and the 80s. They probably came up, you know, making like balloon animals and at Pontins and Butlins. And somehow they got into television. It was a weird time. The Demon Headmaster. Wasn't that a book? swear that was a book. Shout out to Knock. Oh, excuse me. Shout out to Askip. Knock is the currency. I'm not sure what currency that is. He says, Miller claims that Dubois ducked Parker and asked for someone that doesn't move as much. What do you think about those claims? Well, it's coming from Jarrell Miller, and we definitely can't take what he says at face value. He tried to make every excuse in the book for losing to Daniel Dubois. With that being said, it's plausible that Daniel Dubois did say that. It's plausible because you could see how Parker would be a more awkward style for him. Parker's got a better chin than AJ, and he's more used to fighting that way. You know, he beat Andy Ruiz, who was the first one to beat Ruiz. People contest that decision. They say Ruiz deserved it, but still, Joseph Parker set the blueprint for how to beat Andy Ruiz on the back foot long before AJ beat him in the rematch. So maybe it's true. I mean, it's possible. I don't know. You know, it's coming from Jarrell Miller. Who knows? But thank you for the super chat. All right, we're really going down memory lane now. Biker Grove. Yep. Press Gang. Who remembers Press Gang? Grange Hill, Biker Grove, Press Gang. Press Gang was the earliest one, right? Press Gang was before Biker Grove and Grange. Or was Grange Hill the oldest one? Maybe Grange Hill was the older one, and then Press Gang, and then Biker Grove. Trapdoor Magic Roundabout, yep. Magic Roundabout was crazy. Was that inspired by the Beatles or something, you know, during their psychedelic phase? Because Magic Roundabout was, you know, bizarre. The Moomins was weird as hell as well. You know, if you were on something watching the Moomins, I mean, you know, the people who made Moomins and Magic Roundabout, they must have been on stuff. Because that stuff was, them shows were weird. Yes, see, somebody knows. Shamila Turner, Press Gang, Dexter Fletcher with the American accent. That's the one. Pogwall. Okay. Pogwall is the Australian one, right? It's Australian or New Zealand. Then we're moving into, you know, Neighbours and Home and Away and all that. Captain Pogwash, of course. Kojak. Yeah, more 80s and 70s and 80s shows like, you know, Kojak, Murder, She Wrote, Diagnosis Murder. You know, there was a time when all of these murder mystery television shows would always have somebody that was not a policeman or a policewoman solving all the crimes. Isn't that amazing? Like Jessica Fletcher's a writer and she solved more murders than every police department in the show. It's like, what are they paying these police for? I shouldn't even be mentioning that word for the sake of the algorithm. But yeah, she was solving all these cases, you know? And the police couldn't do nothing. They were rubbish. And then you had Diagnosis with Dick Van Dyke, and his son was the policeman. And Van Dyke was a doctor or whatever he was, and he was solving all the crimes. For some reason, at that point in the 80s, the 70s, 80s, they didn't want television policemen solving crimes. He had to be a writer or a doctor or some other person, a mechanic, you know. Ironside, yeah, in the wheelchair. He was actually a policeman, though, right? Yeah, Magnum PI, Golden Girl, Columbo. Columbo was hilarious. Petrocelli, that's another one. Yeah, Columbo was hilarious. You know, Columbo always come through, act like he's your friend, you know, acting the fool. What's the The saying that Johnny Nelson always comes out with. Playing the fool to catch the wise. That's what Columbo did every episode. Oh, it's probably nothing. Oh, my memory. He'd always talk about his memory and his wife with his wrinkled jacket and his glass eye. Something was bothering me last night. See, that's why I had to come back. He's like a pesky little fly, keeps coming back. Just one more thing, yeah. There's just one more thing that's bothering me, sir. You see, there was something that you told me that didn't add up with this. And yeah. Glad Tidings says, Hatman, what happened to athletics? It used to be a mainstream sport. What happened to it? What happened to it? I think there's too many interests in the world now. There's too many distractions. You know, back in the heyday of athletics, there wasn't as much to distract people. Whereas now there are so many different sports, so many different types of entertainment. And ultimately with athletics, it's like people winning races by tiny margins and whatever. Maybe people are too desensitized. They want to see something more dramatic. You know, this is the era of UFC, boxing, trolling, you know, people doing all kind of crazy stuff on social media. Maybe athletics is not extreme enough for people. I don't know. Just throwing ideas out here, thinking out loud. Copen says too many peds, nobody believes what they see. That's another possibility. No dough in athletics. There you go. Another good point. There isn't the money in it. And people in today's world, more so than ever in my lifetime, are obsessed with money. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. I shouldn't have said that, actually. That's a P. Diddy song. Let me take that back. The Equalizer reminder. Yeah, The Equalizer with Edward Woodward. What a great name. Edward Woodward. Yeah. He was serious. The original Equalizer. With the original theme music. I was disappointed when they redid The Equalizer with Denzel that they don't have the original theme music. Another iconic show from... The Equalizer was the 80s, right? Not the 70s. Because there were so many shows in the from the 70s that they were still airing in the 80s on a regular basis. So I do get confused sometimes between 80s and 70s shows because there's a lot of overlap. Minder was a great show. With Arthur Daly, with the original, what was his Minder called? Arthur Daly's Minder called. What was his name? Forget the guy's name. Not the actor's name, the character. In Minder, what was Arthur Daly's Minder actually called? Terry, there you go, thank you. Terry. The original Terry, because they replaced Terry later on, didn't they, with like a younger Terry? And he was nowhere near as good. The original Terry was way better. You know, I watched I watched the clip a while back from an episode of Minder where Arthur Daly is trying to get Terry to stay in the house of this guy who I think he's an art dealer or something, or an antiques dealer. But Terry says to Arthur, he's a bleeding iron. That's old school, London Cockney slang from back in the days, right? He's a bleeding iron. An iron is Cockney rhyming slang, iron hoof. I'm not going to say what it rhymes with. You guys know what it rhymes with. Iron hoof, yeah? He's a bleeding iron. He's like, there's hundreds of them about. Hundreds of them, I'm telling you, he's a bleeding iron. There's hundreds of them about. Yeah, but I did like Minder. Arthur Daly's character was great. I liked his little sayings. He'd always talk about the readies. He got the readies. Cash in claw. He'd always come out. In fact, Arthur Daly was a lot like a boxing promoter, wasn't he? Like he was like an old school boxing. That was his vibe. He had like old school boxing promoter vibe. Always coming out with the witty one-liners and the little old school sayings and all that. Yeah. Arthur Daly. Yeah, he always required security because he was always up to no good, dodgy deals. Lovejoy, yeah. Remember Lovejoy? And you go into the 90s and there was so much great comedy in the 90s, The Fast Show, Harry Enfield. S.A says, Minder are Only Fools and Horses. I have to go with Only Fools and Horses. Minder was great though, but I have to go with Only Fools and Horses. So many classic moments and classic episodes. Men Behaving Badly. Actually, there was another one around the time of Men Behaving Badly, and the first season was really funny. What was it called? It had Samantha Jonas in it and two guys who I don't know the actors' names. Game On. That's what it was called. Season 1 of Game On. That was, I'm telling you, that was the one right there. Season 1 with the original actor who played, what was it? Was a guy called Matt? He was an agoraphobic. An agoraphobic is someone that's afraid of going outside, right? I think that's what agoraphobia is. And the original guy, who I think was Matt in Game On of season 1, that was hilarious. He owned the flat and the other two lived in there. Yeah, when they replaced him with the new actor, it was rubbish. But with the original actor, hilarious. Game On, yeah. The Young Ones, Bottom, yep, remember those? Eddie Hitler. Yep. Brass Eye. I remember an episode of Brass Eye, which, I mean, I don't think they could put it on TV these days, but there was an episode of Brass Eye. I hope the algorithm don't trigger here, but there was an episode of Brass Eye called Petergeddon. That episode was so wrong, but it was damn funny. It was crazy. That episode was crazy. Because they got Phil Collins in that one. He thought it was real, right? Nonsense. They got Gary Lineker in it. Yo, that was a crazy episode of Brass Eye. They'd never get away with that today, putting that on. That was a madness. Yeah, and of course, right around that time you had Ricky Gervais. He started coming up. Was he on Brass Eye? What was that show called? There was kind of, I think Brass Eye was like a spin-off of it. Because you had Ricky Gervais, who came up on that show. 11 o'clock show, thank you. Yeah, Ricky Gervais was on there. And that's also where Sacha Baron Cohen created the Ali G character in it on the 11 o'clock show. So Ricky Gervais came out of there. Sacha Baron Cohen came out of there. And they had a particular type of humor, you know? And really, you can look at something like Brass Eye and you could see how, you know, Ali G and Borat came out of that. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like they were duping celebrities and people into thinking that it was a real thing that they were doing, a real report and investigation, when actually it was a spoof. And that's what Ali G, well, more so Borat was about, right? The film. Eurotrash. Yeah, Eurotrash that was entertaining. Eurotrash with that French guy. It was two French guys, right? It was Jean-Paul Gaultier on a random one, and the other French guy who was straight. Dennis Pennis, he was actually funny. Tarrant on TV, yep. Beatles about, Jeremy Beadle with a small hand. I remember when one of my friend's dads told me Jeremy Beadle's got a small hand, because I never noticed it at first, because he used to hide it under his sleeve. He was like, yeah, watch out, Jeremy Beadle's got like a really small hand. You know, like a back scratcher. So after that, I was always watching for Beadle's hand. Yeah, I remember Dennis Pennis, he was at a film premiere one time, you know, doing the thing, trying to get interviews with the celebrities and trolling them and stuff like that. And in one of them, he saw Woody Allen. And he was like, Dad. Yeah, that was wild. He started chasing Woody Allen down like, yo, Dad. Goozy says, Bo select to destroy Craig David's career. It probably did, which is kind of a shame because Craig David, I mean, I've never been an R&B fan, not 90s and beyond. I liked R&B in the 70s and the 80s, but I was never like a fan of 90s R&B or any of that. It got a bit too sweet boy for me, you know? But I heard a Craig David song the other day. I was like, damn, Craig David was actually really good. I was never into his music. I knew his, you know, big songs and whatever, because you go to the nightclubs and they were always playing. But listening back, and I saw Craig David do a performance on the radio with Big Nasty, and I was like, damn, Craig David was actually sick. he was actually really damn good. Craig David, like one of the best singers to come out of Britain in a long time. Not just in terms of the voice, but his songwriting and all that. Like, he was very, very good. Very good. Yeah, he could genuinely sing and he could write songs, you know, like his songwriting was on point. And he could perform. Like when I saw them performances, I was like, whoa, Craig David was actually the man. Got some weirdo turning up in the chat thinking I care about something I don't care about. Bye. These weirdos. This guy's probably a Tyson Fury fan, still salty about Fury losing to Usyk. Thinks I care that much about AJ. Oh yeah, I'm distraught about AJ losing. Dear, oh dear. Another Fury fanboy. Shout out to KO Boxing Vibe for the super chat. He said, Hatman, if offered, would you ever work with DAZN like Ade or like Ade does or True Geordie is doing now? Or you reckon it's better to just do your own thing? I prefer to do my own thing. I don't like working for people. I don't like being under anyone else's regime, having to answer to deadlines and, you know, be here at this time and do this and commit to this. I don't like doing all that. Guryon says, Fill Me In was another great track. But in this day and age, we'll probably have to put a pause after even saying that, right? Depending on how you interpret Fill Me In. But yeah, shout out to KO Boxing Vibe for the super chat. I like being independent, you know. I don't like being under anyone's regime. That's why I didn't like school. I was always an intelligent kid. I just didn't like the regiment and routine of school, being confined every day for, how many hours is school? Is it 6 hours? 5 or 6 hours, whatever it is. I hated it. I thought it was like being in prison. Glad Tidings says, what happened between Ade and Ryan? Remember when they did Box Talk and Ryan was the one who knew boxing more? I think Ryan just decided to do his own thing. You could tell that there was some tension between them in some of their videos. I think Ade even talked about Ryan kicking him out of his house a few times. Because when they used to talk in their videos, Ade always used to nitpick the things that Ryan said. And you could see that Ryan would get like agitated sometimes with how nitpicky Ade was. So, yeah, I think Ryan just went off to do his own thing. But you could tell from those early days that Ade had a presence about him on camera. You could tell that he had talent there on camera. Trevor OJ says Mark Morrison. Yeah, Mark Morrison was the quintessential one-hit wonder. Man had one song that was a big song, but that's it. And there were so many of those back in the days. You know, back in the 90s especially, there were so many one-hit wonders. Yeah, BG says, Craig David looks like Lloyd Banks. He does indeed. Bruno says, Hatman, what's the beef between Don Charles and Spencer Fearon? I'm not sure. I mean, Spencer said there really was no beef. His beef is with Stan Dubois. But Don Charles is a very sensitive character. Maybe he doesn't like the way that Spencer's talking to Stan and the way he's tried to interfere in their situation and maybe tried to cause tension in the camp. And he's taken offense, so who knows? Yeah. Kylie says, Return of the Mac never returned. Indeed. That's the irony of the song, right? The name of the song. Sosa says, Hatman, do you rate Inoue? I don't think I heard you talk about him. Yeah, I rate him highly. I don't talk about him as often as other fighters. And this was actually discussed by, I think it was Paulie Malignaggi and Chris Algieri on Pro Box TV. And I think there may have been some British pundits that discussed it as well. Why Inoue isn't spoken about by Western audiences as much. For one, he don't fight in the West, but for two, he doesn't often fight names that most people recognize, unless you're really into the lower weight classes, which most boxing fans aren't, including myself. When you're talking about minimum weight and, you know, flyweight and super flyweight, I mean, I don't really take much time to watch those weight classes, just being honest. Obviously, I'm aware of some great fighters. Obviously, Finito Lopez, back in the days, was a great fighter. But, you know, bantamweight and up, I tend to watch a bit more. Obviously, Inoue has moved up through, you know, over the years, but he still hasn't reached a weight class where there's a lot of recognizable names that people are interested in. Just being honest about it. The Gaming Circle says Crazy was Mark Morrison's super hit. I don't think I even know that song. You sure it was a super hit? I mean, you know, I'm not the most in-touch person when it comes to popular culture. But I don't think I've heard that. Sosa, to answer your question, yes. I felt that way for over a decade. Controlled up, for sure. 100%. Agent provocateur. Excuse my French. Mr. Merkel. I like the name, by the way. Any idea what's going on with Chris Andre and his channel? I know you're more of a solo dude, but would have loved to hear you collaborate more with him. Yeah, he's taking time away from YouTube right now. He checked in with my group, my Element group, and he says he's cool, he's doing okay. He's just taking some time to, live his life and do his stuff, and he's got his own thing going on. He's not really concentrating on YouTube right now, but he's cool. Last I heard, he's fine. Black Dynamite says, Crazy got 800,000 views and it was uploaded 17 years ago on YouTube. Hardly a hit. Yeah, it doesn't sound like it by those views. Big up Devin in the house. Lee says, Hatman, I got a trivia question for you. Who is the only boxer to win a round without throwing a punch? Muhammad Ali against Sonny Liston in the first fight? Willie Pep. Okay. That's pretty crazy though, right? I don't even think that's I don't even think that's right, for a guy to win a round without throwing a punch. Unless his opponent didn't throw a punch as well. Okay, somebody's saying it's not true. F.A. Jag, but the guy walked out the ring. Yeah, that journeyman was a crazy guy. Looks like a homeless man. He's called, is it Curtis something or something Curtis? He looks like a homeless guy. He looks like the kind of guy you would see living in Tent City in LA. The guy walked out of the ring. Glad Tidings says the Willie Pep story was made up by Bert Sugar. Bert Sugar with his hat and cigar. The old school boxing hacks. The Real Heel says, Hatman, have you watched Carl Froch's reaction to the AJ fight? I haven't. Shout out to Fight Sports Talk. He says, thoughts on Haney suing Garcia. He may have got cheated, but he and his fanboys act like he doesn't need to improve at all or make any adjustments. I haven't seen, because I've only just been told during the chat that Devin Haney is suing Ryan Garcia. I think it's hilarious. Because somebody said that he's suing him for emotional damage. I mean, no disrespect to anyone in the chat, but I can't imagine a boxer from my generation doing something like that. Suing another boxer for emotional damage. It just seems like that's just crazy. If that's really what it is, emotional damage. I mean, suing him for, I don't know, assault or something because they found that he would, I don't know. It's a weird situation. I think Haney needs to be more concerned about keeping himself in shape and dropping some weight. Garcia's the one who's been banned, but he looks in better shape than Haney. How does that work? The guy who's been banned is in better shape than the guy who didn't get banned. I think Haney needs to get himself back in the gym, get himself off those donuts and fried chicken or whatever he's been eating. But shout out to Fight Sport Talk. Yeah, Haney just seems lost to me at the moment. He seems lost. He was humiliated in the Garcia fight. And he hasn't gotten over it. Can he ever go over it? I don't know. I mean, I was wondering, because Haney was there apparently supporting Joshua at the Dubois fight. And when Joshua was getting knocked down and beaten up, you could see Haney like shouting instructions at him. And I was thinking, is Haney having flashbacks to when he was getting beaten up by Ryan Garcia? Because it was similar, right? He was getting knocked all over the place and dropped. I mean, it wasn't as one-sided as AJ against Dubois, but yeah, he would have, he could relate to what AJ was going through for sure. Yeah, someone says Haney did get cheated, but he's moving like a Karen. So you put it better than I did. He's moving like a Karen. Yeah. Shout out to Byron Newton. Shout out to Byron Newton. Over there in Knots. Yes, Devin, I saw the Oscar De La Hoya video. And what was most entertaining to me about the Oscar De La Hoya video was the comments. You scroll down to the comments and somebody said, De La Hoya's smile is straight out of a horror movie. And it really is. Like, De La Hoya has got one of the most sinister smiles I have ever seen. His eyes don't look right. That weird clapping thing that he did after every... Like, De La Hoya is very sinister. Shout out to Black Dynamite for the super chat. He says, Devin suing Garcia for battery, fraud, and unjust enrichment, not for emotional damage. Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Unjust enrichment. So that's, making money or the status of a win or whatever the case may be, which he didn't deserve since he was on PEDs. Okay. Devin says, Oscar realized people love him as a villain. It's a crazy irony though, right? The golden boy, who's supposed to be, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, but he's actually a really dark and sinister character, Oscar De La Hoya. I guess that's a microcosm of the macrocosm, right? So much in our world looks shiny and friendly and golden on the outside, but inside it's like pure darkness. Glad Titan says, do you remember those early YouTube boxing channels like Guard Your Grill Boxing, Boxing Info, Pound for Pound Boxing, etc.? Did you watch any of them back in the days? The back in the days channels I remember were people like Blood Boxing, Casino. Casino still makes videos, but not that many boxing videos these days, as I understand it. But yeah, Blood Boxing, Casino. Who else was there? There was a guy who still makes videos now, I think, under a different name. But back then he was called Men Take Bubble Baths. He was like a notorious figure in the YouTube boxing community, right? He had so many beefs and he was always attacking people. He attacked me many times. Men Take Bubble Baths. He was very kind of Strange character. But yeah, men take bubble baths. I used to watch his videos and the early videos that he made. As I say, blood boxing, Cali boxing or Calix boxing, Joe Habib. Used to watch some of his videos. Gambino. Who else was there now? There was a guy called Box Pred. He was a Welsh guy. Wingy. Some of the British ones. There was Jose Silva. Who else did I used to watch? Dubois, of course, he's been doing it from 19 long time. Well, not quite 19, but 20 long time. Who else was there of the old school guys? I know there was many more. There was Boxing in the Hallway was one of my favorite channels with Chuck Nitti and Fidel Castro, AKA the Great One. Their show was hilarious. I mean, it was hilarious. Fidel Castro, right, AKA the Great One, TG1, he was like one of the most vicious trolls in the YouTube boxing community. The stuff he used to say about fighters was so wrong, you couldn't help but laugh. Do you know what I mean? Because the stuff he would say was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, Chuck Nitti and TG1, they were based in New York. Chuck Nitti's like a black American guy. TG1 was a Latino guy. He was the cameraman, and he had the crazy mouth on him, that guy, TG1. Crazy. Boxing Gossip, yeah, I remember him. Big Ragu, of course. The Big Ragu. Yep. I remember Big Ragu. An Italian-American guy. The Big Ragu. Yeah, the Big Ragu used to box, I believe. I think I'm pretty sure he said that he was a sparring partner for Buster Douglas at one point, or he was brought into Buster Douglas's camp, I think when he was training for Tyson, but he didn't get to spar him, and he's glad he didn't because Douglas was knocking everybody out in the gym. I swear Big Ragu told that story where he was brought in to spar Douglas, but he didn't, and he's glad he didn't because he was knocking everybody out. Yeah, there was a few Irish guys back in the days. One of them was called Paddy Boxing. He was actually quite good. He used to talk a lot of betting, like Dwyer, but Paddy Boxing, he was quite good. He did very short prediction videos. He used to speak in this very quiet voice, but I liked Paddy Boxing. He was good. He knew his boxing. Paddy, there was Paddy, and there was another Irish guy. I can't remember his name, but this other Irish guy was had more of an aggressive demeanor. And he was around the same kind of time as Paddy Boxing. I can't remember the other Irish guy's name, though. But yeah, I did like Paddy Boxing. Somebody says there that Chris Bird had a boxing channel once. Yeah, but Chris Bird, I found it hard to watch his videos. He talks like a guy with PTSD. I'm not saying he does have PTSD, but that's how he talks. He's like, voice is all quivering and he struggles to get a sentence out. And yeah, I found it really hard to watch his videos. Kylie says, anyone know why Boxpred stopped making vids? Dunno, man. Life, better things to do. Horrible people on YouTube. There's a lot of people that quit YouTube back in the days just because of the trolls. They couldn't take all the trolling. I've seen many a channel over the years, many a YouTuber over the years delete their entire channel just because they got a big prediction wrong. That's how fragile some people are. Delete their whole channel because they got one prediction wrong. Incredible. I remember in the run-up to David Haye versus Klitschko, which I predicted right, by the way. I predicted Vladimir Klitschko would win that fight on points. Long-time subscribers will remember the video I made where I actually had video footage of their fights and I had the final countdown music playing in the video, right? That was my prediction video. And after deliberating all the way through and doing the breakdown, I came to the conclusion that Vladimir Klitschko was going to win on points. And there were people that turned up in the comments saying, you don't know what you're talking about. Both of these guys are massive punchers and they both got glass jaws. How the hell can you say this fight is going the distance? It's obviously not. And there were people cussing me out for picking Klitschko. Hey, he's going to knock him out. Klitschko could, if it was Vitaly Klitschko, he might have a chance, but hey, he's going to destroy him. How could you not see it? You know these people who get angry at your prediction? I never understand that. Why would you get angry at my prediction? It's just I don't get angry at your prediction. You might not get angry. It's a high-level fight between two world-class fighters. It's not like a world-class fighter going up against a journeyman and I'm picking a journeyman. No, it's two world-class fighters. Anything can happen. Why would you get angry for me picking Klitschko to win? Anyway, there was some guy, I think he was actually a Somali guy. He was really angry with me for picking Vladimir Klitschko. I'll never forget it. And he was leaving all these comments on my videos, right? Proper trolling me and saying I don't know anything about boxing. And he made videos on his channel. You know, he had a little BS little channel with his rubbish little videos on there. And so when Klitschko won on points, like I predicted, I went to go, reply to the guy in the comments. And he deleted his old channel. Man deleted his whole channel. Can you imagine that? He wouldn't let me get the satisfaction of getting my revenge on him. Man deleted his entire channel. That is crazy. Kylie says Wingy couldn't handle that Tyan Booth heat. Yeah, that was messed up, man. Tyan Booth said some stuff about Wingy and his girl, which was crazy. You know what Tyan Booth is like, saying stuff about Terence Crawford's wife or his baby mom, and all that stuff. And he said some stuff about Wingy and his girl, and Wingy didn't like it and he disappeared from YouTube. Somebody says Tyan Booth shouldn't throw stones in a glass house with some of the women he's now been seen with. Well, Tyan Booth is one of these kind of characters that just doesn't give a F, does he? He just doesn't care. So if you were to slag off the women that he's with, I don't think he'd be offended. He's one of them kind of guys, Do I think he's funny? Occasionally, but he's a bit too weird for me, truth be told. Yeah, occasionally he's funny. Like the early Tyan Booth stuff when he was always trolling Coogan and Umar, that was funny. Like that was proper funny, the early stuff. Not when he started talking about Coogan's kid and all that. Was like, yeah, a bit much for me. But the early stuff when he was trolling Coogan with the... what is it now? The be safe and all that, and Umar with the watch. How's your Tuesday going and all that? Yeah, that was funny. Bent legs. Yep. That's when Tyron Booth was on form. The Umar, IFL Umar stuff was so funny because they were like, pictures of Umar always showing his watch. Like every picture on Instagram, he had to pull his sleeve up a little bit before the person took the picture. Hang on, no, wait, don't take the picture yet. Let me just pull my sleeve up here. Make sure you get the watch in. How's your Tuesday going? Yeah, that stuff was funny. Birdie Num Num. I never knew what Birdie Num Num was from. Obviously, Dylan White was saying it in relation to Coogan. But I only recently found out it's from a Peter Sellers movie. And if you haven't seen that clip is actually hilarious. Crazy, but hilarious. That Birdie Num Num Peter Sellers clip. Yeah, that's crazy. Always pouting, yeah. That is a weird thing as well, right? Why Coogan pouts. Why any man would pout in pictures. You know who also pouts, right? Some of you may not know this guy. There's a rapper called Bugsy Malone, and he's always pouting as well. I'm like, this is like some roadman rapper. But whenever you see him in pictures, he's always pouting. I don't know what that's all about. Man's always pouting in pictures. Weird, like Coogan. Men are not supposed to pout, bro. Unless your name's Zoolander. Zoolander always pouting Blue Steel and all that. Alex Watch says, remember when Coogan Cassius put it on Prince Patel and threatened to cave his head in? Yeah, that was funny. That interview they did when Prince Patel was putting on Coogan was hilarious back in the days. Dog Boone says, Hatman, where did your old profile pic come from, and why does Dylan White wear it in that open workout vid? Well, it's just it's a famous picture of Muhammad Ali. So, yeah, it was just a famous picture of Muhammad Ali. You're letting the community down. Yeah, that's the interview. When Prince Patel said that. Glad Tidings says Bugsy Malone was actually an amateur boxer as well, which makes it worse. Yeah, I think he took the right career path, rapping, because I saw some of his boxing and I was like, yeah, he was better off rapping. Although wasn't he going to do Misfits or something, Bugsy Malone? Who is he going to fight? No, I swear they said Bugsy Malone was going to fight Floyd Mayweather. But somehow it didn't happen. But I swear Bugsy Malone suffered a brain bleed, didn't he? When he had a crash or something a couple years ago and he suffered a brain bleed. Somebody that suffered a brain bleed is never going to be allowed near a boxing ring. So maybe that's why it didn't happen. But I swear they were talking about Bugsy Malone versus Mayweather. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it says he crashed his quad bike. And I'm pretty sure I read he had a brain bleed. And there's no way they'd let him near a boxing ring if he suffered a brain bleed. It says the blood clot went through his heart or something. His heart. So the bleed wasn't on the brain? I swear it said he had a bleed on his brain. If you've had any kind of injury like that in your brain, they'll never let you fight in anything. Malone was rumored to fight Mist. Mist. Isn't Mist a bit small to fight Bugsy Malone? Mist a short little guy. Bugsy Malone is like at least 6 foot. So Mist is too small. Mist had a fight recently on DAZN. Oh, did he? How did he do? I had no idea that Mist had a fight. Yeah, Adrian saying he had a bleed on his brain. Yeah, if Bugsy Malone had a bleed on his brain, they'll never let him fight in Misfits or anything like that. Okay, Devin saying Mist was about 190 or 200 pounds. Okay, so he's probably a similar weight then to Bugsy Malone, but Mist is all pumped up in it with weights, and maybe Bugsy Malone is pumped up a little bit as well. But I don't know, I just get the feeling that Bugsy Malone is naturally bigger than Mist, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Dropped him 3 times with those Dubois jabs. Who? Mist did. Wow. Mist got hands like that? Mist is Kieran. Devin knows who I'm talking about. Kieran. Mist is actually Kieran's cousin. That's Kieran's cousin there. Mist. You can see where all the talent went in the family. Leo says, Hatman, which is worse, getting beaten up for 12 rounds straight or getting knocked out cold with 1 punch in the first round? Well, getting beaten for 12 rounds straight is worse for your health, but getting knocked out in the first round with 1 punch is worse for your ego. Alex Watch says, Mist KO'd Ryan Taylor in the 2nd round. Okay. Okay. I'm going to have to watch this fight now. I never knew Mist had hands. I never knew he had hands like that. Maybe he can fight. Well, again, if Bugsy Malone has had a bleed on the brain, they're never going to let him fight anybody. All right, let me try to clear it up now and find out if Bugsy Malone had a bleed on the brain, because some people are not sure, but I'm sure that I already did. He did have a bleed on the brain, which will, again, prevent him from partaking in any kind of misfits or anything like that. They'll never allow it. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Yep, it says it right here. Well, he said in a song, as somebody mentioned in the comments there. Unless he was you know, hyping it up and exaggerating the severity of his injuries. He suffered a bleed on the brain while in hospital and also a blood clot in his chest. Yeah, if that's true, then he ain't boxing anyone. Very dangerous for him to box anyone. If you ever had anything like that on your brain, ain't gonna let you go nowhere near a boxing ring. And rightly so, you know, because that Misfits thing is making a lot of money for a lot of people. And, you know, if somebody ends up seriously injured or worse, they're going to shut down that. Yeah, they're going to say only professionals should be doing this, not these YouTubers or whatever. So, yeah, that's probably why he hasn't done Misfits, because he's always acting like he's a fighter, but he ain't actually fighting anyone. That's probably why. He won't let him. Because you look at, for example, who's the guy that Chris Eubank Jr. hospitalized? What's his name again? Very tough guy. British fighter. What was his name? Who beat John Wright? Nick Blackwell. Thank you. Nick Blackwell suffered a relatively minor brain bleed. It didn't require surgery. Okay, so it was relatively minor, no surgery, a tiny bleed. Comes out of hospital, he's fine. You know, one of the few boxers who comes through a situation like that without any long-lasting permanent damage, without them needing to open up his skull and all that. And because he felt fine and he thought he was okay and it was such a minor bleed, he thought he'd go and have a spar. This might have been a year after the incident or something like that. And started getting hit, fell down, and now he's back in hospital and they did need to operate on his head this time, open his head up. Yeah? So once you've suffered any kind of bleed or like that on the brain, it's a wrap for you. You're not going to do any kind of fighting because it's very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Yeah, well, Adonis Stevenson suffered a serious bleed. His wasn't like a minor one. Whereas with Nick Blackwell, the one that he suffered in the Eubank fight was very, very minor. Very minor. It wasn't actually a blood clot on the brain. From what I can remember, it was a very small bleed. But that led to a much more serious injury in sparring. Kylie says Nick Blackwell isn't in a great way these days. Yeah, because he took his very close shave that he had in the Eubank Jr. fight for granted. Yeah, after escaping a situation like that without having to have major surgery or anything like that, he thought he could get back in a boxing ring. Glad Titan says Stevenson's recovery was miraculous. Yeah, it was. He made a tremendous recovery, kind of like Spencer Oliver. Now, I remember when Spencer Oliver got injured. And he's one of the few that made a full recovery. Although Spencer Oliver says he still suffers symptoms even now. I guess like headaches and, weird things from time to time. But yeah, full recovery just like Adonis Stevenson. Not many of them make recoveries like that. Usually when it's a blood clot in the brain, you're talking about severe disability or RIP. But a few of them managed to pull through completely and live a normal life. As I say, Spencer Oliver. In fact, Spencer Oliver was doing a breakdown of Joshua Dubois with Shane McGuigan for TalkSport. And they both had headgear on and gloves, and they were like throwing light punches at each other. And I was actually wincing. This is how sensitive I am in my old age. I was actually wincing every time Shane McGuigan even like brushed Spencer Oliver's head with a punch. I was like, oh my gosh. You know what I mean? Because I remember when he went through what he went through. He got knocked out bad and stretching him off. And yeah. I remember all that, man. I was wincing when Shane McGuigan was throwing punches at Spencer Oliver. I was like, sheesh. Devin says, anytime Fury is ringside to support a fighter, that fighter loses. Nick Blackwell, Billy Joe Saunders, Nathan Gorman against Dubois. Fury's face while Dubois is smashing Gorman is priceless. Yeah, but he may have broken that curse because didn't he turn up to support Dubois against AJ? So Fury might have finally broke his curse because normally, yeah, it's a curse, isn't it? When Fury turns up to support you, you're going to get smashed to bits. Byron Newton is out on the drink. He says, man, Hatman, I've just been chucked out of the taxi in knots, but I understand and see I should move to the east woman-wise. Well, you ain't going to find no good woman out on the Raz. You ain't going to find no good woman in a nightclub drinking. They're definitely not there. The good women that do exist that are left in the West, yeah, they're not in nightclubs. Devin says, nah, bro, he was supporting AJ. Fury was supporting AJ? You sure? He might have acted like he was upset when AJ lost, but I don't know, man. Fury's been preying on AJ's downfall since day one. He wanted the 150 mil bag. Fury picked Dubois to win. I think that might be the first AJ prediction he's ever got right. Yeah, I tend to agree with Goozy. He said, Fury definitely glad AJ lost after he lost himself. I reckon that's about right. BG says, David Haye picked Anthony Joshua to win. That's the real juju. That's a whole fact. If David Haye picks you to win, you might as well pull out the fight. On a level, you might as well pull out the fight if David Haye picks you to win. Wacko Jackal says, Hatman, do you think Jalalov is going to be champ in this era? Well, if he actually stops messing about with amateur boxing and concentrates on professional boxing, yeah, he should be. I don't know what he's still doing messing about with flipping, amateur boxing, still trying to win Olympic medals like some bully. Keeps going back to the amateurs. They need to cut that out. They need to cut that out. Bally Boxing says, Fury wanted AJ to win because if AJ won, he would have swerved the Usyk rematch and got 150 million to fight AJ. Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. Matthew says, do you think Fury AJ should fight anyway to settle second and third best of this generation. But we'll see what happens with the Usyk Fury rematch first. Glad Tidings says, I've never seen Teddy Atlas pick the right winner. I've seen him pick the right winner a few times. He gets them wrong, like we all do, but I've seen him pick a few, winners. Adam and Black Dynamite say, Teddy Atlas loves the sound of his own voice. Teddy Atlas is unbearable to listen to. I think Teddy Atlas is okay in small doses. But he definitely loves the sound of his own voice. He doesn't let Ken Rideout get a word in edgeways. As soon as Ken Rideout even thinks about trying to make a point, Teddy Atlas is jumping down his throat. Pause. And that's a bit off. When you're watching two people talk and one of them just keeps cutting the other guy off and not letting him get a word, it's like, what's wrong with you? Where's your conversational etiquette? Let the guy say something. Yeah, I agree with Behemoth that Teddy Atlas I like him in small doses. So I won't usually watch entire episodes of his show. I'll just watch specific chapters when he's talking about certain fights. And even then, if the chapter's too long, I might have to skip through it a bit because he can waffle on and not get to the point and try and use too many different metaphors and whatever. And his metaphors are not as eloquently put as Dubois' metaphors, because Dubois takes you on a journey. When you watch a Dubois video, yes, the video's about some super bantamweight fight, but he's going to take you on a journey talking about basketball in the 1970s, American football in the 90s. He's going to bring in some Motown music managers, and all of this somehow is going to tie in to relating to a super featherweight fight that's happening next week. So Dubois is great with the metaphors and all that. He's the master of it, better than Teddy Atlas. Teddy bugs on the windshield Atlas. Teddy has got some good sayings, putting the earmuffs on, the bugs on the windshield and all that, going through the bad neighborhood. So I like some of his metaphors. Joel Schulman says, hearing Dubois say Rosansky could give Usyk big problems was so damn funny. Dubois has said such wild things over the years, but that's part of why I like his videos. It's entertaining. He doesn't use the term anymore, mid-range hookers. He doesn't use it as much as he used to, because everyone used to troll him in the comments. Dubois would do videos in his bathrobe sometimes, and in the comments, it'd be full of people saying, oh, Dubois just got done with a mid-range hooker. Yeah. So one of the wildest things that Dubois ever said was when he picked Rod Salka to beat Danny Garcia. That was wild. There was a guy early on in Beterbiev's career who actually dropped Beterbiev, although I didn't think it was a legitimate knockdown. I thought that either Beterbiev slipped or he tripped over his foot or something like that. But Dubois seemed to think it was a real knockdown. And anyway, Beterbiev knocked this guy out in like 2 rounds. And you've never heard of him before or since, right? And in Dubois' post-fight video, he said he was more impressed with the opponent than he was with Beterbiev. That was another wild one. What a wild... yeah, back in the days, during Vladimir Klitschko's prime, Dwyer always used to say that Bernard Hopkins, who was 45 or something at the time, would beat Vladimir Klitschko because he's got an inside game and Klitschko doesn't. I swear at one point, Dwyer might have even said that Canelo could beat Klitschko. Yo, Dwyer says some wild stuff. I swear he did. I swear at one point, Dwyer picked Canelo to beat Klitschko. But, you know, we love him all the same, you know, because when Dwyer's right, he's really right. And when Dwyer gets it right, it's like, wow. For example, he picked Tony Thompson to beat David Price. He picked Fury to beat Klitschko. He picked Usyk to beat Fury. You know, so he's got some real good predictions over the years, but he's also had some wild, wild ones. You know, saying Canelo could beat Klitschko. That's crazy. A shout out to Ricky Torres again for the super chat. He says, Devin also suing for assault and battery. Check the news. Devin suing for everything over here. Devin Haney, let me see. Devin Haney suing Ryan Garcia. Wow, he's suing him for battery and fraud. Fraud, you know. Let's have a look here. Devin Haney on Friday filed a lawsuit against Ryan Garcia alleging battery, fraud, and unjust enrichment, while also naming Garcia's promoter Golden Boy Promotions in the lawsuit, demanding a full review and adjustment of accounting for their controversial bout that now stands as a no contest. Fraud. That's crazy. Joel Schulman says, it's the raw passion that makes the wildest claims seem feasible. Well, Dwyer is a lawyer by profession, right? He's a practicing lawyer. And so that's what lawyers are paid to do, right? Lawyers are paid to make wild stuff sound plausible. So he should be good at it. As a lawyer, when you know your client is guilty as hell, you got to go in the courtroom and make out as though he's innocent. But when he comes up with his BS story, his BS alibis and all that, you got to sell that to the jury. That's what Dwyer does for a living. So, yeah, he brings that same methodology to his videos sometimes. But shout out to Dwyer, man. I'm a big fan of his channel, have been for years, and I've learned a lot from Dwyer, actually. I like the way he articulates himself. I like the way he constructs his arguments. I try to be a bit more succinct. I don't like making videos as long as he does, but I've definitely tried to learn from the way he talks and communicates and whatever, and the way he puts his analogies and so on. Byron says he's too lawyer-like. Yeah, he talks. Dwyer has that voice and that cadence in his videos, like he's in the courtroom all the time. He doesn't seem to have like a casual voice. He's always got that formal courtroom voice going on, which has become his trademark. And like a lawyer, he's always got a disclaimer at the start of his videos. Because he doesn't want you suing him if you take his advice on a fight and get it wrong, or take his financial advice and go broke. So always forward thinking, as a lawyer, has a disclaimer at the start of every video. Yeah, Dwyer is Jamaican. He was born in, I think Kingston, he said. Kingston, Jamaica. And then moved to the United States with his family when he was a kid. I think he was raised in Queens, New York. Very well educated. Went to, did he go to Harvard? I think Dwyer went to a pretty prestigious college and, yeah. Pro Calla says, Hatman, I'm a law student. What do you recommend I specialize in? Data protection, intellectual property, or trademark law? You're asking the wrong guy. I am no expert on law. You should be teaching me about law. You're the law student. You should be teaching me stuff. I couldn't tell you. All I can tell you is I've known many people with law degrees, and none of them, as far as I'm aware, are practicing law as a profession. So, yeah, I don't know what that means, but there are so many people I've known that had law degrees and none of them are lawyers. So maybe there's just too many people with law degrees. Spinodo Dragon says he went to Stanford. Dwyer, that is. Lucan says he doesn't have a New York accent. Well, he left New York, I think, many years ago. I think he's been living in California, I think Northern California, for decades now. You can still hear a bit of Jamaican, actually, in Dwyer's accent. When he says certain words, you can still hear a bit of Jamaican in there. So, for example, he'll say prepare. Yeah, when you're saying the word prepare, he'll say prepare, which is the way a Jamaican would say it. Unprepared. In fact, there's a few words you can say that will guarantee that you sound Jamaican. Yeah? You ready in the chat? I'm going to tell you how to sound Jamaican, right? Say the word, or these are two words, right? Say beer can out loud. B-E-R-C-A-N, beer can. Beer can. Beer can. That's how a Jamaican says bacon. Beer can. Beer can. Bally Boxing says Jamaican instead of next, it's next. Yeah. But you can still hear, as I say, some Jamaican in Dwyer's accent. Black Dynamite says, I heard Bayesian sounds crazier. Yeah, the Bayesian accent's pretty, actually quite similar to the Bahamian accent. You know, the accent of the Bahamas and Barbados is quite similar. I would say Bayesian is a bit more weird. The Bahamas accent is a bit softer, a bit more similar. It has more of like an American, Jamaican type influence in it. More so than the Bayesian accent, Barbados. Talking rubbish. Argus. Yeah. Dylan White will never live that down. He'll never live that down. Fight Cesara. Cesara and Argus. Yeah, that's another Jamaican thing. Talking out the side of your mouth. A lot of yardies do that. I don't know why, but a lot of yard men talk out the side of their mouth. It's a Jamaican. I don't know why they do it or where it came from. But a lot of Jamaicans talk out the side of their mouth. The old school ones. Got the side mouth. Like some cartoon fish or something. It's weird. And talking to Jamaicans, I'm low-key addicted to Vibes Cartel's Instagram page. Have any of you looked at Vibes Cartel's Instagram page? I can't help looking at it. It's just like, he's doing like, how long was Vibes Cartel locked up for? Like 10 years, 15 years? He's doing about 10, 15 years of social media in about a month. Vibes Cartel's Instagram page is crazy. 13 years. Thank you, Leo. Yeah. I can't help watching. I don't know what it is, because he's not really making videos about anything, you know, particularly interesting, but there's just something entertaining about it. Yeah, I've seen his workout videos with his matchstick legs and his face all bloated. He has like, what is it, Graves' disease or something they say he has? Leo says, Hatman, people feel that it isn't him and it's a different person. Yeah, I've seen people say that it's a clone and all that. I mean, why would they need to clone Vibes Cartel? Is he that important that he needs to be cloned? And whenever people say that celebrities are being cloned, I know they have the technology to clone animals, and they try to say they don't have the technology to clone humans. BS. Okay? If you can clone animals, you can clone humans. So I've got no doubt they can clone humans, and they probably do. You know, even though it's officially illegal. You know, we know stuff goes on behind the scenes. But why would they clone a random Jamaican washed up musician? You know, and furthermore, right, if they're going to clone him, wouldn't it take 40 or 50? How old is Vibes Cartel? In his late 40s or 50s? Wouldn't it take the clone 50 years to, you know, to look like Vibes Cartel? That's the thing that doesn't jive for me about this cloning idea. When they said that a Gucci Mane was cloned. Well, when did they make the clone? Because the clone would have had to reach the age of Gucci Mane to look like him, right? So it doesn't work out. Like the timeline doesn't work out. Unless they've got a way of accelerating the aging of the clone. Like, no. I don't see why they would clone people who are so insignificant. If it was like somebody from one of these wealthy dynastic families, they might do it. But some random rapper? I don't see why they would do it. Doesn't seem important enough. O'Neal says Vibes is having fun with his life. Yeah. As he should, right? I mean, the last couple of years when he was locked up in prison, he was in a cage, a tiny box, basically, where he barely had room to, never mind swing a cat, swing a mouse. So terrible conditions. And, you know, that's whether you think he should even be out in the first place. He was locked up for an M. He was locked up for red rum. That's what he was locked up for. A guy called Lizard, whose body they never found, but they still locked up Vibes and a bunch of other people for that red rum. And somehow the Privy Council intervened and got Vibes Cartel out. What on earth is all that about? Why would the Privy Council, which is King Charles's Privy Council, why would they get involved in getting a random Jamaican music artist out of prison for red rum? Like, why would they? The whole thing is weird. Yeah, we had this conversation last time, like, King Charles likes Vibes Cartel. That would be the most random thing ever. If King Charles liked Vibes Cartel. That I cannot imagine. I would sooner believe in Vibes Cartel being a clone than believe that King Charles listens to Vibes Cartel music. That I cannot believe. That I cannot believe. There's no way that he's listening to Vibes Cartel. Never. All right, Ballyboxing says, Hatman, what about the rapper who got locked up for red rum? You think he just got out? Huh? Crazy T got out? Nah, you're lying. No way did Crazy T get out. You must be lying. He never got out, did he? No way. I'm looking now. I don't see any headlines about it. Nah, they never let him out. He got like 35 years. Let me have a look here. No, he's not out. He's still in. He's still incarcerated in HMP Long Lartin. One of the worst prisons. Still in Long Lartin. Yeah, Titch is... He's got, what, another decade or so to go? 20 years? And Titch didn't even do it. But he was there. You know, so... The way it is in the UK, if you're there, you're present with the person who commits the M, who commits the red rum, and you don't snitch on them, then you're guilty and you're doing the same time that he's doing. So yeah, he's in there for something he didn't do, as in he didn't actually put anyone in the ground, but he refused to snitch on the person who did. So... yeah, he's doing like 35 for that. Spinodo Dragon says, Hatman, do you like Outkast? I remember you doing a podcast on rap music a while back. Yeah, I like some of Outkast songs. You know, I'm not like a big fan of them, but I have liked some of their songs over the years. Sol Perez says, what do you think about P. Diddy and the baby oil? I try not to think about P. Diddy and the baby oil. That's my answer to that question. Try not to think about that. You know, in the UK, there is a word for people who play for the other team. Let's just call it that. And the word is spelt differently in different parts. I think up north they spell it P-U-F-F. In the south, it's usually spelled P-O-O-F. And that is a pejorative term for somebody who plays for the other team. And so P. Diddy, back in the days, they call him Puffy or Puff Daddy. Yeah. And so to English people, that was always kind of a weird name. Now in America, it doesn't have the same meaning. But it was almost like, I don't know, the universe was trying to tell you something about the guy in a roundabout way. Yeah. Alexander Great saying, waiting on the Trump episode dropping. That's coming. I was literally editing that. And, the editing is the part, because it's all recorded. The voice recording, that's quick. But it's just putting all the images to the voice that is the tedious work. But that's coming either this weekend or the week coming definitely. And if I don't put it out this weekend, I'll do a different episode instead, ahead of that one. But that's all recorded. I just need to finish up the images. Cash says, Hatman, do you remember the Errol Spence guy who was obsessed with road life? Yeah, he was a P-brain. P-brain. All right, peeps, I'm going to lock this off now. Shout out to everybody for joining me on this live. I appreciate you all. I've enjoyed the conversation. I've enjoyed the jokes, the trip down memory lane. So once again, shout out to everybody. Appreciate you. Biggest shout out to everybody who donated via Super Chat. Special thanks to those guys. And I'll catch you on the next one. Be good. Take it easy. I'm out.